for like a week or so. I
mean, that's the real struggle, isn't it? Especially once you start working out and get into a regular routine, all the fun stuff that comes with it.
Yeah, like the roll and ride, just like it, because all your back muscles are exercised with the roll and ride. So, like,
well, it could be worse. They could put you in that like sensory roller thing that they have for like special needs kids. That's like, come here, Anon. We need to get you in the autism squisher, but
yeah, the hug box. I feel kind of cozy, but that's yeah, because
well,
you're literally like lifting your whole body up.
And tweets about like the benefits of weighted blankets and stuff, and then people go into like an existential crisis about who they are as a neurodivergent individual.
My mother had weighted blankets back in because in Italy they don't have like their central heating's terrible. So if it's like a cold winter, they have heated blankets. It's like she would say like, put more weight on because like that, because it's all stonework, right? So
it traps the heat.
Yeah, especially in the south when it gets cold. In Brazil, I believe they also have weighted blankets. Like the global south has a thing about weighted blankets. I don't know.
It works for them, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Calabria back in the 70s kind of was like the global south. It was just as bad, bro. It's like they were literally a third world country. Like, but the more like Rome was like approaching second world, and then as soon as you get to the south in the 70s, you had like donkeys and horses and buggies. I'm not joking. Like it's
all at the same time while the era and terror of lead was happening in the 70s.
It's crazy though, because like when my mother, when she immigrated to, but like Brazil was actually better off than Italy back then, believe it or not. When the military junta took, like, because she was part of like the Italian, like the Little Italy's in Sao Paulo, and it was better. Like it was better like than in Italy, because she went back to Calabria for a few years before she came to Canada, and it was literally like she literally like went to a third world country, even though Brazil is like way worse now than it's like funny how that works. So funny how a military junta can just solve a lot of problems in a multi-ethnic country. I wonder. Anyways, oh my God, we're live.
I know. Welcome to episode 28 of the Digital Archipelago, everybody. I hope that you are all having a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're at. We're just catching up. This is what we usually do as we go live, but you already know how this is. We're 28 episodes in.
Yeah.
Almost Gio, 30. How are you outside of the sciatica pain?
Oh, I'm all right. Like, I just woke up. Like, it's worse in the morning, but I'm pretty like. It's not like before where sciatica, like I was totally immobilized. Now I can walk fine, But because back in the day it was bad. But what's funny is that we're almost 30 episodes, and Content Minded give a few like skipping a few weeks. I have 33 episodes next week, and it's funny because like we started Digital Archipelago like right after your episode, so it's like yeah sorry, I'm just doing the shill tweet.
You're going up in the world,
Yeah, it's funny how people like in the scene like someone said this on Oren's comment section, like how, because I was on Oren, because people, of course I was on Oren Mac there last night. You were on Oren before me the day before, and it's funny because like people in like the YouTube like reactosphere that like survived the noose after the great purge of all the low IQ people in the NTSW days, except for Sargon, of course, because it's funny how that works, but it's funny because like more people know me, like they know me from doing the show with you, because you have more clout on YouTube, like because you've been doing it longer, but yet on Twitter, it's like on the Substack and Twitter, people know me like as that like avant-garde, like post-frog Twitter. So it's like really weird how like I'm not gonna lie to you, bro. I'm not gonna lie. I wish I had 30K. I'm almost at 30K now on Twitter. I wish I had 30K subs on YouTube. If I could like transfer the audience to become like a Lobby account again on Twitter, and then like have a bigger YouTube audience, that would be like Kino, because I would actually make money off of having 30K on YouTube. Like,
Well, that's why I always feel like I never know what the hell I'm doing on Twitter, because it's just like, well, I can make a video or write an essay and do that, but tweeting, posting, dunking on libs, just like,
Yeah.
like what makes you a good avant-garde Twitter poster, I guess, is a little different from what makes a reliable YouTube commentary kind of person. So
I
it's
make
just
all right
like,
on YouTube. I make like maybe 300 to 500 a month or something. I don't know, something like that.
yeah.
Nobody makes money. Like the thing is, though, if you had 30K, like you can make money on YouTube, but it's not like back in the day. Like those grifters, they just raked it in. Like it was like they never left anything on the table. But now everyone got felted after the YouTube apocalypse. So it always funny to see like people crying with like 100 to like a million subs. They're like, oh, I don't make any money anymore. I'm like, bro, you have a million subs. What are you talking about? Get out of here.
I have to chuckle at it because you were on Oren yesterday with Last Things. I was on Oren on Tuesday, and we covered not the world's prettiest subject matter.
Yeah.
We covered the
Astonished it got monetized. I couldn't believe it.
well, it all works out. But the thing that irked me was in the comment section. They're like, you guys don't use these words. Use what they actually mean. And it's like, bro, this is a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Like, and I get it. People get upset because you get codified into language where like, or I see it in the comment section when you and I chat, because it's just like Geo speaks in this like weird cryptic, like allegorical tone about certain people or things. And it's just like, well, guys, like we kind of have to, because that's the nature of how it is. Because there are certain people who do politics on YouTube that are still monetized. Not that we're gonna have it forever. I'm well aware of the fact that one day that will end, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But
what's funny though?
Like a language game.
What's funny though is that Styx isn't monetized. But like if he was monetized, he would easily bank like I could imagine easily 20 to 80 grand a month. But like it's just I think because he it's not that Styx is controversial, it's just that he was part of that apocalypse wave that they just like tagged him as a subversive. And so like it's almost funny, like Oren is a good example of like the like the post apocalypse, you could still like basically like get away with stuff if you're careful. But like because Styx was just around for so long, he got the noose with all the others. I don't know how like Sargon. I think Sargon like legit had to just change his whole brand to get monetized. I think
he had to start a whole business.
Yeah, the Lotus Eaters.
Yeah, he had to start the Lotus Eaters to get, because every channel that he would start, because there's like maybe 9 or 10 channels on YouTube that Carl started, they all eventually got the noose. In terms of monetization, but I mean that just came with being the character. But
remember the Thinkery? Remember the Thinkery, the smaller videos,
the little game or the gaming streams.
Oh yeah, he would just like go off on the Thinkery. I think that's what Turkey Tom does. Like he has Tom Dark where he just doesn't care, so he'll like stream, like he'll have Null on the stream, or like people dropping F-bombs, but it's not a monetized channel, so like he makes quite a good bed. He makes like quite a good amount of change.
Oh yeah, and a COD daily.
A COD daily.
He's got like 9 or 10, that are out there, and so I thought that was. I mean, he's impressive though to transform from sort of a. I don't want to call him a lol cow, because I think to say that would be disingenuous.
He was very close though at one point, but he realized he was
bordered the line. But I think that he is the proof that I think no one's ever really gone on the internet, and I think there are ways that you can come back from it, and Carl's the ultimate story. To go from borderline YouTube lolcow from going from Reed Locke to basically talking about how Britain is being colonized by the third world is a pretty radical change. So I will simply say that that's probably a good thing. But Mr. Wegner here gives us a really good point. Twitter is basically a shop window for one's own work, and a void one screams into and waits for literal echoes. And that's how I describe Twitter, or just like the online in general, is that especially if you want to make something, you're entering a void. But that void is like 130 decibel jet engine sound at all the time of people screaming.
Yeah.
And you're also screaming into this void of screams, adding your voice into it, hoping and praying to God or whatever deity that you believe in that someone will hear you and that you might be able to pick up an audience. And sometimes you get lucky. I consider myself one of the lucky people. I'm just thinking to myself, well, damn, like someone's hearing me, scream into the void, and that's pretty cool. But I guess us to sort of the first subject that I wanted to talk about today. I didn't want to talk about Haywood yet, although I love his sort of cheery doomer optimism. But what I wanted to talk about was, and Morgoth gave me permission to sort of talk about it, because he told me that our stream about the Bird app, the what you call the Heaven site.
He watched it?
Yeah, he watched it, and he drew some inspiration from it.
Tell him to come on Content Minded.
I will.
After this show, after Digital Archipelago, of course. But that's we'll see.
Yeah. But he wrote this lovely essay called Beyond Twitter Dome.
Look at this comment.
Which one?
Sorry, look at this comment by Donald Trump Gaming. By the way, on my default video, he said I only watch because the anime characters. Chud mode activated. Libtards owned. The West saved. Game journalism integrity restored. We need to go back to MTV promos, bro. That's got to be a thing. It's like Beavis and Butthead. It's funny because someone mentioned, I was listening to the song "I Alone" by Liv last night, and someone in the comments said that Beavis and Butthead reviewed that music video, and the drummer didn't have his kit. He was just wandering around in this forest, in this desert. And he's like, "Oh, the drummer's just wandering around like a butt munch." It's. I don't know. We need to go back to that culture. I feel we need to go back to when MTV was edgy, when millennials were somewhat decent before we descended into post-ironic soy jack beard lumberjack hell. So I don't know.
So return to an age before hipsterdom.
Yeah, well, no, but even hipsterdom was far better. It was hipster. Okay, hipsterdom is truly celebrating eclectic culture, but yet the soy egalitarian is different than the hipster. The soy egalitarian is the Cape stuff, listen and believe. The hipster generally did appreciate niche culture, just that we didn't know because we hated them so much at the time that we didn't know what we had. The hipster had a few reactionary tendencies, but then you see these, again, what I was talking about with default, you see these creatures crawling out of the millennial internet from years past, excuse me. For example, Subject to Change says Eliza Blue is MySpace e-girl stalking My Chemical Romance. Now here she is again with this fake human trafficking case. Yeah, exactly. I love lip crit.
Where does he fall into, Gio? Where does the soy egalitarian, does he fit in this sort of
Okay, the Norwood soy was a hipster, but now they've sort of transcended to this cringe version of Norwood sincerity. I love crit. I don't know why, but the I heart you know what meme. The way I say it is I love my wife. I heart my wife. I heart, not gonna say the word for YouTube, but I trans heart who's right. It's but the Norwood is definitely bordering on the chew, but I would say that the Norwood is of an older generation, because the Norwood is definitely older millennial vibes. This whole bearded soy, pipe smoking, he's got Gravity's Rainbow. I think I saw a logo version of this once where it's got Gravity's Rainbow, but my favorite one's I Love Art Crit. It's a painting of Picasso chopping his ear off. It's I remember one time this guy, this leftoid, responded to Fen de Villiers with some ridiculous stuff you just a fascist who worships power, and then I quote tweeted him behind the block with I love art crit, and it's I don't know why I say it that way, but it was funny. It was funny at the time. I ratioed him. Because I love when Fem gets into internet. He loves Twitter because he's like you, he doesn't really know the older culture of Twitter, so he just loves getting into fights. And it's really, I Gary, okay, here's for the chat. By the way, Shill, what are you doing? Where's the super chats? Come on, guys. This is Fruit's channel. Go to Fen de Villiers' Twitter and see any thread he posts. Go to the comments, and he's warring with someone in the comments. It's hilarious. And he doesn't, he just has that Scottish Anglo fury within him, and he just doesn't care. And it's but yeah, Donald Trump Gaming, 1990s to 2000s culture was the last time white people were white. Well, it's the last time that, the Faustian Apollonian spirit of the white man could truly express.
Oh, you found the
SpongeBob Dr. Pierce.
William Luther Pierce SpongeBob
the crustacean power structure. The best part was at the end. He was like dying of laughter. He was like, Mr. Krabs setting SpongeBob up with his with his ball busting daughter. I didn't know the whale was. I didn't know Mr. Krabs that was his daughter.
Well, I'm gonna disappoint like everyone in the audience by saying I've never seen a single episode of SpongeBob ever.
You know, I used to thought SpongeBob was cringe when it first aired, but then I started watching when I was older, and I'm like, man, this is pretty good. This is pretty quality. Like, of course, the later seasons are like flanderized, right? They're not very good, but like SpongeBob is no, it wasn't Ryan Folk. It was some small channel, but no, SpongeBob. Like the first few seasons was quite quality, but then they just like ruined it. It wasn't like a Rick and Morty where like it was just like out of the gate terrible. But yeah, I don't like my best friend in real life. He forced me to watch the first 2 seasons of Rick and Morty. And I'm like, I don't like this. This is bad. But we don't have to worry about Rick and Morty anymore, though. Apparently,
no.
So.
Apparently, you know. He's gone for being a male feminist, is his usual bit, right? And they said that they're going to continue on without him, so I can't wait for Mindy Kaling to voice both of those characters on mainstream Adult Swim television.
One of my favorite Adult Swim shows is, was Squidbillies, but then they
that's so good.
Yeah, but they got rid of Unknown Hinson because of like being pro MAGA. And like the new guy they have is like this, okay, I don't care that the new guy they have is like obviously a black guy, but it's like the voice is all off because Unknown Hinson did those like little Southern drawl like sayings like I transducify that you not wild, you mild. Like he would do stuff like that, and Unknown Hinson just made Earl Kiley, like he made that character, and to get rid of him for being a MAGA like the guy's a country and western singer. He's an outlaw country singer. He's not going to be a MAGA chud. Like, are you serious? Like it's like the guy toured with David Allan Coe. Like of course he's going to be a MAGA chud. Like come on, like it's But I sorry, I clipped your point, Prue. What were you saying?
Oh, I just find it funny because one of my favorites was Super Jail. That was probably one of my favorites.
Oh my god, they should have made. Oh man, I wish they would have made more seasons. Like Super Jail was brilliant. It was like you know what's funny though is when you watch those older shows, even up into the 2000s, they had like they had very much like they took the same vibe that original Simpsons had, where it's like we know American culture's like we're living in trash world, but we kind of like love like Duckman's the best, where it was. It was before the internet, right? But it was like on the cusp of the internet, but it was like you had to truly express your chud rage at everything, you had to be local, and you had to like realize that I'm living in decay, I'm lower class, but I like it because it's like we're all living in filth now.
Well, very much, every episode was Jason Alexander just screaming about how the world sucks.
Yeah, but
it was perfect. It was perfect. Bring back Duckman. But
it truly was one of the best postmodern shows. Like the one bit up where he tries to like be in like friends, like he tries to be their friend, but it's like the way he said it, where he goes, every time they look at you, you're hip, you're young, you're cool, you're sexy, they're what you want to be. Every time they look at me, I remind them of what they are. Meaning that every time they look at Seinfeld, we remind them of who they are. Like, it was so brilliant. Like, this Seinfeld versus Friends 90s war dialectic was truly incredible. Like, the way that they put that Easter egg in Duckman. There's so many Kino episodes of Duckman I could go over. But anyways, we want to talk about...
Well, you actually, it was perfect because you mentioned our mutual friend. See, I'm the one saying it now. Our good friend, Fan de Vias. Yeah. And you said that he isn't up to the Twitter lore. And I actually wrote, because I wrote sort of because Morgoth nailed it on the head with this essay, but I wrote a little Substack piece on it yesterday called Discursive Containment, and in parentheses question mark, because I have mixed feelings about how effective Twitter is at containing things. But yeah, I'm just going to read this little bit, and it says, This is from me, so this is from yesterday. I said, I am often out of the loop on the quote-unquote lore or the history of certain personalities, Twitter accounts, and factions. The latter has gotten me into trouble with a few people I would have potentially called friends, simply because I'm mutual with individuals that they don't get along with. I mean, for the love of all that's decent, I think one person is capable of having a friend group or even acquaintances where not everyone gets along, but you don't bring them both to the same party or conversation. I often have to rely on my very much online co-host of the Digital Archipelago, Geo, which I have linked to your YouTube channel, for what backstory or ongoing drama that's going on simply because I don't have the time or simply because I wasn't there to invest my time in it.
Yeah.
And I do have to sort of rely on that because Morgoth had said, and I'll read a little bit here. He says, it's becoming increasingly the case to consume dissident right content is simply to consume the latest spats and interscene squabbling that happens on Twitter. What's more, an entire lexicon is emerging in which, if you're not on Twitter, may as well be Chinese. I will preempt a criticism I can foresee that I'm mainly cope posting or that I in some way are annoyed and that I'm blocked from the fun and games of Twitter. I have no doubt that my reach is reduced through not being on Twitter, but the fact that I have skipped the Great Femcel versus Tradbro War or the Ortho versus Pagan Gang Smackdown doesn't keep me awake at night. It doesn't keep anybody awake.
Remember E-Girl War #1? Yeah.
Because nobody cares except people on Twitter. And I'll end it there. But yeah, Morgoth's essay is pretty good. And he does pose an interesting question. I kind of wanted to get into it because our mutual friend Ryan Turnipseed had used Twitter rather successfully to a point where, one, people think that he's actually anonymous when he's using his real name and face as a complete...
I couldn't believe that was his real name.
It's the most American name ever. Yeah. It's basically if someone was like, we need to remake Johnny Appleseed. Well, why don't we put
Germano
it in this 6'2" Germano, blonde-haired, blue-eyed American boy named Ryan Turnipseed?
He needs to lift weights though, because he still has kind of nerdish features, but if he gets toned, if he gets swole, can you imagine him? He'd be like a certain stormtrooper in a certain era of Germany.
Well, I mean, apparently Turnip has been given workout stuff to work on from Skeptical Waves, Clossington, and Charlemagne. So we might get our Ubermensch sooner than you think. But it made me laugh. But he used Twitter successfully within the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod to have their new, Luther's Large Catechism, their catechizing book, rescinded based on pushback and criticisms. And he had laid out his 14 point thread on Twitter. Yes, he's 6'2". He's a giant. I have met him in person. He's a tall man. And he so he managed to have it successfully rescinded. And so now all of Lutheran Twitter is up in arms because it's either the conservative factions on Turnip's side or the rest are like, well, maybe we should get Ryan excommunicated. We can't believe he's posting anonymously when he's not. And the real crux of this thing here is that it really shows...
people think I post anonymously.
That's what fucking kills me. And what I find even more funny is that rather than engage, because they can't engage in this dialectically because he read the source, he did a 3-hour stream on it and everything. And what comes out of it is that, well, rather than engage with the points, we will acknowledge his non-existence or write him off as anonymous. That way, it's easier to dismiss and call him a fascist or whatever when he's not one of those people.
Well, I believe Reddit called him an Austrian painter fanboy with equally, not unsurprising views on women. So apparently, Lutheropape.
I mean, based, Ryan.
Based. You know what's funny, though, is that he literally nailed his 44-point treatise to the digital wall of the Lutheran Church.
Yeah, I mean, I think our friend Clossington made a meme out of that. Yeah, he did. So let me go bring that up on screen. So yeah, but no, it was absolutely perfect. It was well done. I was impressed. And yeah, so let me go share it. So yeah, because I mean, real name, he's shown his face since 2021. Yeah. He's been around this sphere since before he graduated high school. So it's he's been here. But yeah, I mean,
oh my God.
They're all of his tweets.
That's incredible.
So I mean, there's obvious proof that you can in Twitter impact the real world. But at the same time, I do think that it's very difficult have real world impact if you are constantly distracted by like the bits and baubles of Twitter and
Yeah.
the latest bits there, like group chat culture. You like have to constantly be plugged in all the time, or like you know, hours long Twitter spaces, which are kind of like the same thing really here for live streams and such,
Yeah.
except it's on Twitter. So it's a really great way to flex it and expose your voice physiognomy to your fellow anons. It's fantastic.
Hmm. There's something about the Twitter space, like, I don't know, they make me annoyed though. But I think, like, I was talking about this just the other day, before my stream with Oren, because I was interviewing a poke who was on Twitter, but then he left, but he's a Substack writer. And we were talking about like why he left Twitter, and he's like, I come to the conclusion that it's really seductive for people doing any sort of like content or intellectual work, because it gives you like, it does give you good ideas, but I feel like it lulls you into like thinking it's not escapism, because you're still engaging with some sort of mental work. So you can justify literally like what I do, which is like constantly looking at your phone to see notifications, but always engaging. It like lulls you into this complacency, when really in actuality you may be slightly better than the people that go on Facebook all day, but yet you're still like largely using social media escapism, even though like it does have some kernels of intellectual work. So if you're kind of like a high IQ word cell, then you could you know what I mean? Then you could be there like in a minute, like you could always justify being online there and never logging off. But then like when you do make that step, if you poke at the wrong grifter, you will get bodied by their fellow. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Like I mean, I don't have to like go into detail when it comes to Morgoth. Like I can imagine who he was tussled with, but like it's just unfortunate that when you do like when you try to stay neutral, it is like a constant job, because then it's like certain people, like like I said this analogy before, it's sort of like that for beginning scene in The Devil's Own, where the IRA had a shootout with the British, right? It was the Brad Pitt film, uh where it's like you see like the women on the streets, they're like, oh Jesus, and they're like running off. It's like, when people go to war, it's like it's best you sort of like not catch a stray. And I think like
Hmm.
Morgoth, he caught a few strays, and I feel
Well,
like
I
that's
mean, Morgoth. I would say that it's not that Morgoth caught strays from ongoing Twitter spats. It's that Morgoth is like on a whole different level of awareness. I
yeah.
mean, he's never. I don't think he's ever been doxxed. Thank Christ. But
No,
I mean, he's in the annual Hope Not Hate report. I mean, as soon as he like
he
made the
is.
yeah, he is.
Oh
And
my
they have
god.
a whole little section that says Morgoth will continue to produce videos and blog and like be spread hate everywhere. And and as soon as he briefly came back to Twitter a couple months ago, the first person that like immediately like made aware of it was the arch nemesis of sort of like the British dissident politics sphere, was Mike Stuckberry.
Oh yeah, of course.
And
Yeah.
so like it was only a matter of time. Um and he is our fisherman. He is the fisherman we all ought to be in some regards. But I mean, it indicates that I don't think for him it's not like, oh, which like personality on Twitter did I piss off. No, it's more like I'm on a whole totally
Mhm.
whole different level. But no, Internet Friend has a great point though about that, because you're going to constantly see it happen more and more, where
Yeah,
people will want to feud against personalities. And it's I think after a
because you
certain
build a clout
following.
that way.
Well, yeah, but at a certain point with following, you kind of attain some kind of tenure or something like that. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't see Raw Egg Nationalist having some expose dropped on him and like it's all over, bros. It's a guy that wants you to eat better and is ripped and was on Tucker Carlson and is a British guy, right? Like, okay, great.
He's had multiple exposés on.
Yeah, and he's
Yeah.
still here and he's still doing fine. Like nothing's crippled them. Like after a certain follow count or after a certain publication, which is why you really should publish something, I think, is a way to sort of
Yeah.
um concretize your position online. But I find it funny because it's like, well, those people probably aren't going to they're not going away anytime soon. It's not like BAP's going to be like, okay, I'm done, right? Like that's never happening.
No.
This is your money making machine, or a big part of your movement or clout or whatever. But if you decide to go to war with them, right, you're gonna totally get destroyed pretty damn quickly. And we see it all the time. And on the inverse of that, you also see that with with Nick Fuentes. Like the one, regardless of your opinion of him, like you go
both
after
of
him,
them, yeah,
or go after either of them, right? You're gonna get
it's
just
not going to
body
be
slammed
fun.
on the internet. It's
Yeah.
not gonna be fun. And so everyone else, for me, it kind of feels like I'm just some random guy from Ulster that's been thrown into a trench, and it's like, all right, don't put your head out and just like let the shells fly overhead, and you'll
Yeah.
figure out which ones are yours and which ones aren't really quick.
But I think like when it comes to like the problem is that of course like when sides go to war, it's like they have to up the rhetoric on each other. Like I think like Bap, like he obviously has like he's managed to piss off like a lot of like like Christians that have followed him. But I think like the new like but at the same time like I mean I understand like his critique. Like I understand on a certain level like a lot of like a huge section of the dissident right like they have like their hopes in certain things that might not be a good strategy in the modern world. But then like when you take it to a point where you're like actively pissing off like a lot of people, then it's like I think AA is like I hate to say he does this as well too. Like he's the recent like here's the thing. When you look at that tweet that AA did on like fathers, and then you like go listen to the stream he was on with I believe
Red
that
Hawk and
woman.
cows.
Yeah, is that like isn't a Panama Hat like engaged to that one girl
I
with
believe
some
so. Yes.
cows? Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And of course John D was there. Like if you listen to his point though, what he was trying to make, he's obviously like correct in that a man has like a different like a father has a different role in a child's development than a mother. But yet like when you look at Twitter, like he knows what he's doing. Like I truly believe AA knows what he's doing by posting that stuff. He knows like he's gonna piss people off, and like he knows he's gonna get like these. And he's right. Like you know what? I hate to say it. Like I know people, they know like oh you're a simp and all that. Whatever. It's part of the brand. Whatever. But there are a lot of like these trad women, like holistic grifter accounts that like are essentially just like 90s feminists when it comes to their opinion of men and fathers. And it's like I feel like a lot of these trad girl, like trad LARPer women, they have such incredibly difficult high standards for men that only like you know what I mean? They're essentially replicating like female dating strategy shit. Like they're like, like six figures,
Yeah,
6 inches,
it's
six, yeah,
6 feet,
6 feet,
6 figures,
yeah.
6 inches. Yeah, I mean they're basically doing FDS but in a sundress, in
Exactly,
Wheatfield.
yeah, yeah. And the problem is like it's yeah, so CloutCon is right. The problem with that Geo is that there's an overtly ideological view of masculinity. Yeah, like a lot of these trad women, I hate to say it, like not to name names, but they have like this very unhealthy view of men. And I feel like it's because they like okay, they do interact with a lot of men who hate women. I'm not going to say that like that's a truth, right? In trad spheres, there's a lot of women hatred, and a lot of guys go too far.
Oh
But
yeah.
yet, I do feel like people like Enzo, okay, yes, he does hate women, but he has this like very like poetic take on the situation, and he's got a very like insight in, that it's true that in the modern world nobody cares about men. Like that's just a truth. Like that's just a truth. Now you can whine about it and you could like be like a manosphere like MGTOW, no hymen, no diamond, whatever. But the truth is that the modern world has largely forgotten the sort of the sentiments and disposition of of men in general, and nobody cares. And a lot of these trad women accounts who should like you either have like the two extremes. You have like the pick me, which is like really unhealthy for women. I feel, which is really like not good. Where the point where you're like degrading, like mega. But then you have like that pick me energy, which is like they'll degrade like women to be like, come on, trad boys, come and follow me, But then you have the other trad girl, which is like totally unhealthy the other way, where men are held to like this impossibly high standard. And I'm sorry, ladies, but you're not going to expect the perfect man in an unperfect world. That's the and for men, you're not going to expect the perfect woman in an unperfect world. And I feel like the whole discourse around like trad gendered norms is like ridiculous because I feel like you can like find a good woman that you could red pill and you could, she'll adopt your politics over time. but that's not going to be a perfect situation. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to find this like impossible standard. And I feel like just like even enumerating this point, it feels stupid to me, because it's like I see this discourse and I see those replies to AA, and like the way AA worded it, he's like basically doing kayfabe. He's doing like he's being a heel.
He's
Like
doing the same thing he's done
forever.
that makes him very successful in terms of getting new subs, new content, and more money. Like it, you saw this from Tomboy Abs to Adam and Sitch to America and Evola. Every time it's been an amazing piece of marketing work. The man worships Vince McMahon for a reason, because he's emulating success. And he's got the attitude for it. So
look at Honey Bud. We all deserve less, is what you're saying, Gia. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that
be realistic.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. No, I'm saying like these trad accounts, it is funny. Like, he's right though. Like they're basically repeating like 90s feminist talking points, but they're doing it in a sunflower dress. But anyway, sorry, go ahead, Prude. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh no, I agree with that, and this goes back into the Twitter thing rather well, because this will be the second part of the conversation. But as I said yesterday, quote, for instance, the discussion of no enemies to the right, a conversation spearheaded by the worthy House writer Charles Haywood, started on Twitter as a response to the politically impotent Rod Dreher. Since then, it has gone on to articles both in response to flesh out his position in IM 1776, and probably he'll do something on Tucker Carlson about it. However, I think the most dreaded example, and one that I admit I subscribe to on the occasion, is especially because my tweets will occasionally get mentioned in it, is the New Right Post, POAST, a weekly Substack informing you about the latest voices are saying and the dramatics goings on that were that week on Twitter. In fact, their most recent one featured everything from academics' agents' take on child rearing to the usual tweets of calling trans activists demons. Everything you need and more in a convenient weekly email newsletter.
I mean, they are, but
yeah, they are, right? And so it's to me it indicates that like you want to be plugged in, you want your automated fix right into your veins. Like there you go, subscribe to the New Right Post. I mean, there used to be an account called Frog Weekly that did it. I don't know what happened to them.
I think they left, if I recall. But
yeah,
it's
indicative of the fact that like you can't leave the spectacle, right? Even if you wanted to opt out to it, you got banned from Twitter. Don't worry, you can stay up on what the latest discourse is on your sock account if you subscribe to the New Right Post. And I'm not trying to dig on them. I actually like the fact that someone can conveniently sum up the drama and the best of the tweets and things like that, because it's like I don't have time to be on Twitter 24/7. But like, to me, it's indicative of the fact that. Sorry, I just laughed at internet friends. Comment.
Anime girls will never betray you. No, that's true though. That's true. Anime girls will never betray you.
You're not real.
Well, they're a platonic ideal. I much prefer Fishy Frenzy. I wish Forgotten Frog Twitter came back, because I was gonna write something about Forgotten Frog Twitter, because there was always like an ambiguity, because you would like post these fake caps, and it would be like a huge like test to see like if they were like the true like frog Twitter account like posting. But the way that like he would put the watermarks on, and the way he would like use, like he would switch them up for like different people, like different accounts saying like things that other accounts said, and that he would like trick people. Like it was very much like a postmodern like performance art type of thing with Forgotten Frog Twitter. And I feel like Absent Account, other people, like they saw that, like Score, he saw that, and like that's why like they saw that I saw it. And so I didn't get griped for my like good takes on Forgotten Frog Twitter. But then other people would just be like objectively pissed off at Forgotten Frog Twitter, be like, this is fake. Why would you do this? This is disrespect. But like they didn't get the art form of it. You know what I mean? They didn't get it. But yeah, like the trad girl thing is interesting, how we're still like fighting this war over it. And we're still like the fact that there's like, ex OnlyFans girls that have it's just like,
oh my gosh, what's her name? It's that JPEG chick.
Shannon
with like an E.
Yeah,
Shannon at JPEG, right? Memes dealer, JPEG culture, crypto wellness, unwoke culture has a frog emoji, social media scientist consulting, and like What's the pinned tweet? It's literally her doing like foot archery and like, barely wearing anything. And you have to
Apparently
think
she
to
did that
yourself,
naked on OnlyFans.
I'm sure that she did, right? Like, she's got to be the shield maiden for somebody. And this is a great way, I guess, to attract the brand. But everyone's just like, and she'll pop up in her sundress, be like, greetings, warriors. Like, here's this like meat that I'm eating. And it's just like, who the fuck's falling for this? Like, who is this for? I want to go back. And this is, again, nostalgia is a powerful weapon, a powerful tool. But it's just like, you remember the rule that there are no women on the internet? Can we go back to that? That was a good standard, to just assume that they were all feds, males, she-males, and something else. Like, I swear it was a much easier metric to go by off of. But no, instead, everyone has decided to just throw out Odysseus's advice and not have him tied to the mast of the ship and following the siren song of e-girls' traps and ex-thoughts.
Oh my god. It's we live in hell. We live in hell. But I feel like
welcome to hell.
Welcome to hell, exactly. But it's just like, I feel like I can't be the only one here. I can't be the only true cell on the internet that like analyzes these things from like more of an objective standpoint, because I feel like the whole discourse around I've been ratioed enough by Ernie cells when I talk about women to know that like maybe we shouldn't be like, I don't know, so maudlin about it. But at the same time, I feel like the reason that a lot of these like, holistic like trad women like grifters, the reason they're given such like a place is because they do capitulate to a very deep male fantasy. Guy and girl, guy in real life.
I like that one.
But like the whole, like, it's just even like even the pick me ones, they do have this like fantasy of the men. I shouldn't mention this. I shouldn't even mention that I've even seen this. Do you know Crystal Cafe, Prude?
No, I don't.
Have you heard of Crystal
Cafe? I'm
going
to rely on your lore.
Well, knowledge. I was talking about this with default. Crystal Cafe is essentially the female 4chan. It's like the female image board. And if you go to the feel section, it's like literally like the closest you'll get to real femme cells in the wild. And I had this thing where I was like, to default, I screen cap some stuff, and and Diva was like, leave them alone. Like they're just leave those femme cells in the wild. Like, just don't like, when you see an animal in the wild, you don't like approach it, So, but it's funny because when you do look at the posts, it is like they kind of do replicate the same like incel logic, but for women. But it's like more tinged with an exploration of feeling rather than like a lot of incels and R9K will go into like an elaborate schematic on like how the modern world failed men, which is valid, but it's just like, I highly recommend at least like lurking on Crystal Cafe. I feel like those women that they do have an insight, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to bash them, but it would be, I know that if I were to like screen cap them and like post it on Twitter and be like, oh, this is what femcells look like, then it would be like become a spectacle. And I feel like there isn't a place anymore in the internet where you could just leave an underground group alone, and like kind of like in the forum days, like when Humdog said the internet's a silent place. I feel like when you do express true vulnerability, it's always ripe to get like screen capped. Like there are accounts on Twitter, like, posting all accounts where you added me one, this fat girl that was like a femcel. And I remember like even people were saying like, this isn't like an L. This is just like, you're making
vulnerability.
Fun of. Yeah. And like, yeah, you could say like, okay, you're fat, therefore that's why you're lonely, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, I felt really bad for this girl because,
you had Ena's Stepman like your reply, which like threw me off for a whirl. I don't know if she follows you or not, but
she does. Yeah, we're mutuals.
Well, good for you. I was just like, well, damn, like I was like, wow. I mean, not that your reply wasn't poignant or not. I just didn't expect that, person to pop in there for the discourse. But
because it was sad though. It's sad when you look at when like there are a lot of people in those L accounts, like these e-thoughts that like complain, and like the one chick that posted the workout video where the guy tried to help her, and she's in like the shorts where you could see her camel toe, and she's like obviously doing those, like, listen, if a woman is in the gym.
But her form was off.
That's what I mean. If she has that form where she's hip thrusting while weightlifting, first of all, that's terrible form. That's gonna like really create some kind of gait issue, you know. But if she's got that and she's got the light and the camera and she's hip thrusting with those booty spandex shorts, like it's over, bro. Like just stay away. Like just don't even look in their direction. You know what they're trying to do. Like it's just. But then there are other women.
That's
like
the real. That's the real honeypot.
Yeah, exactly. It's the real honeypot. But then there are other women that do get beefed on, like that fat girl, right? That like, okay, she lost weight. Maybe she wouldn't be like, she'd be like, mid.
I wonder if her gaze ruined her geo.
I wonder if her gaze, yeah, exactly. Kind of like Big Ag. Like her gaze ruined it. My gaze ruined me. But I mean, there always is like, I think like the femcel, there is a tragic character because, okay, me and Default, we obviously have debated this. Like, what is worse? Okay, is it worse to be like an incel and to receive no attention and to be a KHHV, or is it worse to be used as a sex object and then go through periods of like intense loneliness? Like that's always like the genuine femcel does exist, but it's not an asexuality the way that you have with incels, where there's no like sexual attention whatsoever. But it's just that with femcels, like the sexual attention they get is often bad and humiliating and like literally just a guy that wants a hole, more or less. Gays are harmonious and I don't follow the conversation. There was this one thing about the male gaze about like it was some AGP that said like this is superior because you no longer have like the gaze is turned inwards, like basically admitting, right? But like, oh no, this is good because you're not actually exploiting women because the gaze is turned inward. I'm like, wow, that's really it was a semi-viral tweet. I'm like, wow, this is how screwed up people are nowadays. Because I feel like the male gaze could be turned into something productive and something that, lifts the feminine to a divine pedestal. But the gaze that is abused is obviously bad. But it's just like we've literally, which is like indicative of how the modern world has forgotten young men. Like I posted in my Telegram that one if you saw Prude, it's like it's like becoming a strategy of like low status males to to take funny chemicals and like pretend. You know what I mean? Like
that was going to be my point. Is that you said if the male gaze is turned inward, is that not just autogynephilia, which I feel like that tends to be the case, and even Mary Harrington had done that excellent piece.
Incels becoming trans.
Yeah, incels becoming trans. But I mean, I have to raise you said the divine pedestal. To me, that just sounds like we're also abusing the male gaze or turning in something into an ideal, which is not good either.
No, true, but I feel like the male gaze has driven most artwork throughout the centuries. That's what I mean by the divine pedestal. Like the male gaze is essential for the work of art in a lot of ways from a male perspective, because the male gaze has produced that seeing of the feminine in a different way. Like I'm thinking like Gustav Klimt here, you know what I mean? Like, like that's what I mean by divine pedestal. I mean like as an artistic philosophic expression, like Sophia, like even Nietzsche, his in Zarathustra, his wisdom was a woman, right? Which really complicates his like nuclear red pills on the woman question. But that's what I mean. Like the fact that Nietzsche like had such an objectifying view of women, blah blah blah, but yet he managed to say that wisdom was inherently a feminine anima within him. It's really like, Dante. There you go, Ludwig. Dante, like Beatide. He didn't actually have sex with Beatrice, but like that you know what I mean? Like
that is childhood love.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know nothing about Beatide except for the way that Dante basically wrote her into eternity. And I feel like that's how like the usual markers of success for men are kind of negated by the artist, because artists can pull women because they can offer what other men can't. They can potentially offer immortality to a woman. You know what I mean? That's why like an artist can be like a boheme without money or success or even good looks. Like like Bukowski was like just like a drunk, like he really looked like a cryptid, right? But yeah, he like was like pulling women that were like 30 years his junior. Not to say that that's good or anything, but
well, I mean, isn't that what Hollebeck is doing?
yeah. There was this one part where his neighbor, where Bukowski's neighbor saw like this young woman coming out of his like shack half naked, and his neighbor goes, "Bukowski, how did you get that woman?" He goes, I think he said something like, when you understand women, you know that it really doesn't matter. Something like that. Like there was a quote where his neighbor was like, like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it. How can you pull these women?" You know, being like this drunk, like gremlin, old, like creepy old dude. Um, but anyways, about Twitter, I had this comment that internet friend actually posted on my default video. But you wanted to talk about the faction wars on Twitter. That's because I think this episode we should have called it faction wars. But but that would attract too much negative attention, I feel. So
well, but I mean, I think feedback loop is the perfect term to use for it, because what do these sort of factional conflicts do for one another other than to reinforce the desire to stay on, respawn, and come back into it? Now, don't get me wrong, there's reasons to be on there, because I don't think that it's purely negative to be absent to it, because in a self-commodifying nature of the internet, where everyone is a product that you choose to consume, do you want to choose, like, do you want to consume the frog? Do you want to consume the Wholesome Chungus art poster? Like, they're on Twitter, like they're there. Do you want to, it's the same kind of thing with people like the millions of Apustasia Twitter accounts. They all have their own network of people that keep making new Pepes and new Apustasia posts, which I appreciate, because
like
I think
Lawyer Friend,
like Lawyer Friend, or I mean, even Telegram's got like a network of artists that do it. But and so there's a desire to come back onto it, especially because it's people become products and people want to show off their own wares to do so. And when these faction wars happen, it sort of incentivizes you to come back, or if you get banned or whatever, it inspires you to come back on another burner account or another sock account that we know is you. Like Martin is the ultimate example of this. Martin puts out fantastic work, but I think in 2022, Martin went through maybe 20 different Twitter accounts.
Yeah.
And I mean, and has gone through all kinds of factions. He went up against like Book Cat, and then like that person respawned, and they're still kind of spatting it out. And all that it does is it creates this feedback loop. I have to get back on Twitter. I got to make a new account. I have to like get back into the fight.
Can you hear?
It's snowy in North Texas, remember? Yeah, no, I mean,
true. Snowy here.
I bet you're in Canada. No, it says we're back.
Okay.
Redacted. No, we're not doing a lovely tower. Although that's probably one of the more fun parts of Twitter, is that you never know what comes after in.
You know what's funny though is that I feel like the problem that I have is I'm just checking your channel to see if we're live. Prudentialist.
Chat says we're back.
Yeah, we're back. We got 152 viewers. Oh, that's pretty good. Yeah, there you go. We're back. We're so back. We're back. Like literally, we're so back. The problem I feel is like you can't be honest with your criticisms nowadays. Like I feel like the past few years, the environment of mutual criticism is sort of not real anymore, because you're always worried that you're going to get flamed. And like, even like, okay, maybe I should mention this, right? Because like full disclosure, like, I have friends on both sides of the current war, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm still friends with Paul Town and all that, and Joel. And, I'm friends with a lot of like people like Athenian and Martin and, but like I took down my streams on a certain character, even though when I listened to them, maybe I'll put them back up on Patreon, but like when I listened to them, I wasn't immediately hostile, because I feel like this certain character has a lot of qualities that in some ways, like when you look at such a young age, like managed to build certain things, you know what I mean? Like that should be applauded. But I feel like because of the environment around the particular like e-wars, it's like you can't really like look, you know what I mean? Like you can't really engage if you have something to lose, if you know what I mean. Like that's the big problem I have, is like if I was an anon, maybe I would like be more involved with certain things.
Same.
But because like I have such a diversity of people that I invite on my show, like I don't want to like alienate people. You know what I mean? Like it's just like I wish I could have an honest conversation with certain people about their, problems with other people, but it's like, you can't. And so I feel kind of like there was something that someone told me many years ago, and I'm not going to mention his name because if I mention his name, it's just going to cause problems, right? Because this guy is pretty not liked anymore. And no, I'm not talking about Campo. I'm talking about someone else. But if you know my history, like with Thermidor, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He said this to me one time. He goes, Gio, the thing about the E-Right is that you can afford yourself intellectual freedom, and that's a big selling point. But there's a sort of environment of self-censorship, and there's a sort of like mutual panopticon that we create for ourselves that in some ways is even more oppressive than like being kicked out of mainstream institutions. And I'm like, yeah, but at the time I was like, yeah, whatever, who cares, right? Like, but now that I'm older, now that I've been around, like I'm an old hat, you can really see it. And I feel like even Morgoth's a great case because I feel like he's like a similar disposition. He doesn't really want to get involved into like the drama because he he appeals to a wide variety of people and he talks to a wide variety of people. Like even just like you know what I mean? So leaving your drama at the door is I unfortunately kind of like not like a thing anymore. Like the environment of original Frog Twitter was very much almost mutually combative. You were always in this like, blood sports every day, but it was sort of like an arete ideal where you could challenge each other, and by that challenging, you strengthen each other's opinions and beliefs. But then what happens is that crosses over into mutually reinforcing that like orthodoxy or hug box or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And so then like when you go on certain platforms and you go and you invest in certain people, you're them. Like you're there. Like you are identified with them. And it's like you belong to them in some ways, which is something like as much as like, and I'm always public with this, as much as like BAP and the Bappists have been good to me, I'm not like completely a Baptist, I mean? There's some things that I don't exactly agree with. There's some things that, hold me back from being one in terms of, it's pretty obvious in terms of my bodily disposition. But I feel like, when you're around long enough, you tend to know where the fault lines are. And it's very unfortunate that we're sort of like an environment, like on Twitter and elsewhere, where like I'm not just trying to appeal to like woke centrism or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm saying that the capacity for self-critique and the capacity for mutual critique is sort of slipping us by, because as soon as you start to voice criticisms, then you get caught up in the dialectic of, well, you're just fueling into my enemies, and the ergo you no longer have that that way of like critiquing each other. So it's like that's the problem. But anyways, there was a great post, a comment I received from Internet Friend on my latest interview with Default. But you want to talk more about the Twitter war thing, so
no, actually, you had given me a good sort of point that was raised here in chat. Was Nudge Unit says there's something I don't like about it all being brands that one consumes. It makes behavior inauthentic.
Yeah,
and I think that also reinforces what you were saying about the inability to be introspective or to be or to even have just a remote conversation that is somewhat even partially reflexive. And I did that discussion on nostalgia a couple weeks back, and a lot of the comments were about we need more introspection. And I think that the problem is with Twitter is that the moment you get introspective, or the moment that you sort of look at the narrative writ large, or wherever the movement or factions or wherever they're going, is that you get into a point where it's like, well, people are going to view this and construe it as an attack. And that becomes something else that was in here that mentioned, what is it, like about good faith stuff, like good faith challenging is one thing. I mean, you can kind of tell who's playing the hatchling really quick. as Morgoth would
Oh
say.
yeah,
Like, that's
yeah.
easy, right? But I
You gotta
mean,
pay your dues, son, before you go to the pay window.
but yeah, you get bodied for trying to be remotely introspective or reflexive. Like, the question that kind of comes to my mind is this: just like, well, what is the basic group assumption for this area? Like, what's going to be, or the basic assumption group in this area? Like, what's the point? Like, are we fostering a dependency? Like, are we dependent on the idea that maybe Caesar will come? Are we in this flight or flight mode, which I think maybe you could definitely ascribe the ethnac sort of crowd to be, because it's about the preservation of the race and nostalgia, and for a more homogenous society. And then there are others that are kind of just like there. And that comes into a question about, well, what's going to happen next? Like, what are we dependent on? What are we preserving? Who are we fighting? And I think when you get introspective, people are always going to assume that you're talking about you. It enables this sort of schizophrenic behavior and things like that, which it's not good, because I think it limits the ability to have conversation publicly. And sometimes these convos don't need to be public, right? Especially if it's a one-on-one thing. Then you can hash that out.
The Achilles thing should have been like Astro said this the best. Achilles should have been behind scenes. It shouldn't, like, that space shouldn't have been capped. It should have been like,
no one should have recorded a 3-hour space, like, castigating this guy with like 5,000 people in on the space
with like blue checks and everything in the space. Like, it's yeah. But I feel like when you examine,
that was a year ago.
Yeah, man, it was crazy. Like, it
feels like a century ago.
It feels like 1,000 centuries ago. But no, it's funny. I feel like when you examine certain personalities at the top and you examine their audience and like why certain people are attracted to them and why they've managed to create such a lasting presence, there is something there. I mean, you could hate whoever, right? Like, you could hate the people we're talking about, people we're not talking about, whatever. But I'm saying, like, there still is an accomplishment there of the fact that you've managed to galvanize certain personalities for good or for bad, and you managed to create something. But that being said, like, when that turns into this like faction war stuff, then it's like, I feel like again, this certain person I was talking to many years ago said a similar thing about the problem with the E-Right is that we know that certain elements of it, like not just certain elements, but like in general, the structure is bringing together people. And I've written about this, because I was vulnerable at one moment with one tweet. This is like a year or two ago. And, I was sort of blackpilling and people were piling on and blah, blah, blah. And I took a Twitter break and I started writing my series. And, I talk about this, about how really, when you look at it, like, we have a diversity of people that are basically maybe shouldn't be together in one group, but because of the regime that we're living under, we're all under the same umbrella and we all have to find a way to coexist, whether you like. And here's the thing, whether you like it or not, you're gonna have to find a way to, like, at least in part, um like, learn to reconcile the fact that you share a space with people that you don't exactly like, or you think are hostile, or you think are feds, or you think are whatever. Like, the reality is that all of us were all like under this satanic demonic regime. And, like, I hate to say it, but war is kind of bad for business, let's face it. You know what I mean? Like, war is just like, our enemies see what we're doing all the time. If you lurk certain let's call them activist accounts that are networked together, they know all of this faction stuff. They know exactly the fault lines to exploit. They know exactly, like, the sort of, they don't know everything. Of course, a lot of them are dumbasses that don't really know. Like, the one guy that thought I was still friends with Logo. It's like, bro, keep up with the lore, right? But the point being is that they know enough. They know enough to exploit our differences. Yeah, bourgeois beatnik, diversity is their strength. No, I'm saying that the inherent diversity of the E-Right comes about rather by forces that are outside of our control, rather than us coming together and being like, this is what we believe in, this is what we want, this is what we're here. I feel like we're all similar in terms of how we got here, but we're not similar in terms of our beliefs or in terms of what distinguishes us. And it's very interesting that way. It's very interesting how a group of people that wouldn't necessarily agree with each other find themselves within roughly the same universe on the internet.
Absolutely. And I mean, the other thing too is that when it's online, there is no gatekeeping mechanism. It has always had a semi-permeable membrane. Like some people can be like, "Oh, I hate that guy. Like I don't want him in this group chat or whatever. Or I'm going to block him."
Yeah.
But I mean, as long as, and the Millennial Woes had talked about this year or this last month in Millennial, where it was just like, well, because it's semi-permeable, all it takes is like one or two people that still think that this guy's got something to say or that he's worth talking to. And then, and he's not naming names. He's just giving you a very general overview of group social ecology. It's like that tends to be the case. And it reinforces like, well, that guy's to be trusted or that guy's a Fed and everybody's a Fed and everybody's this and that. Which, I mean, again, there's this sort of hyper paranoid schizophrenic nature. But then again, you've got everything from like Palantir Gotham to like, regular Joe Schmo lefties that want to like assume that just because you were once mutuals with Logan Atlas, right, that you two are buddy and it's indicative of the fact that like this means we're in a position that you have to kind of rally around a flag and sort of like consider yourself in good faith with people. Like I didn't know, as Reprobus says, that was actually on your stream, Gio, apparently with Woes. But
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah. And so to me, it's indicative of the fact that,
he was caught up in the E-Girl War 1. I remember, like he was
back when he was still on Twitter. Yeah,
back when he was still on Twitter. Yeah, that was hilarious, by the way. Where it was, I shouldn't say it because at the time I thought it was kind of like it was that picture with Brittany Pettibone, or well, I guess Brittany Sellner now, and it was like Brittany Sellner and some other woman, and he's like, "Look at these two lovely beauties." And do you remember that one?
Before my time.
Yeah, it was funny though. But like he was given the hover hand, and people were like memeing on him, like it was funny at the time. But then people like freaked out. They like Woes. It's funny, like me and Woes are similar in that regard, in that we both are pegged as simps. So, oh my god, yeah, everyone fought after Rage After Storm. That was speaking of pick me energy. You remember Rage After Storm, Prude?
No.
Oh my god. I think she was like Fed posting or something, or then she got kicked off of YouTube, and it was like a huge thing. It was like she was like some 19-year-old girl. It was Spatius Autisticus knows lore more, but it was
like I said, I'm thankful to have a guiding me along the River Styx moment of this Twitter space, because if not, I'd be totally bloody lost. Which is why YouTube is so much easier to navigate, because like you can just watch people's content or like see who they stream with, and you can get a pretty quick idea of who they're with or what they do, and it's like, okay, good. Like Twitter, I never bloody know, because there's always like there's way more lore to it. Whereas like a YouTuber, I'm like I can be very quick to like peruse early videos to today and be like, okay, I kind of get what this guy's about. But maybe that's just me staying within the training wheels of the internet.
One of my favorite images, my favorite edits ever was, it's funny because I know every single piece of lore. It was Lemurian. He posted this picture where it was that one Skywalker, the woman that Achilles proposed to, her baby like lying on the side of the bed, and he was dreaming about Lucas's room, but outside the window was Breezewood, and the couple in Lucas's room was the football couple. Do you remember the football discourse?
Oh god,
from that 4chan post. Yeah, like it's like every little piece of lore was in there. That image, I gotta find it. I'll find it for you. I'll find it. It was so incredible. But follow my good friend. Let me find his ad actually. Lemurian on Twitter. He followed me for years. He's a good mutual of mine. But he's locked now, like everybody. Lemurian.
That's the really shitty part about post Musk Twitter is that they kind of took that freedom of reach thing from a certain 3-letter organization very like to heart.
Yeah.
And like everyone's reach is throttled to hell. And and so the way that people are like wanting to boost their engagement but not their reach is to go private. So everyone's account that I like is locked right now.
At Lemurian Time. That's his handle, at Lemurian Time. I'm trying to find the photo. I'll send it to you, Prude. But yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, Geo would be the post-collapse saga bard of the internet's attempt. I mean, when I always think Geo, you'd be the perfect guy. Like, you know that web comic where like it's like the post-apocalypse and some guy's like, I miss the internet, and then like I know everyone does the Corona Chan one, but like Geo can just be like, here's all the lore, you know. And it's not that did anyone not expect this from Elon Musk? I mean, I didn't pop on there being like, let's go, you know, to Mars with this new Twitter account thing. But the first like 30 days was great.
Oh yeah. Everyone was getting super engagement. Yeah.
Yeah, the engagement was great. Like I went over 12K. It was fantastic. And nowadays it's just like you have to reply guy to everybody that are your mutuals with to boost engagement. Even seasonal click farm worker was like, if I reply with a thumbs up or lol, it's just to boost engagement. And it's like that's the way that it goes. And it sucks. But all that does now is actually reinforce the feedback loop, because if you really want to be heard or seen, you kind of have to fight and you kind of have to get in there and scrap a little more. So it encourages more knife fighting. And you know, doing it in a way that's going to encourage people to actually see what you say.
Yeah, I have to like, maybe I'll try the lock trick. I'll like share my content minded again to see if it works. But apparently if you lock, it boosts engagement, but
your reach is dead.
Yeah, but your reach is dead. So like again, like Musk, like the Uber Redditor like is just mid-maxing now. Like the most like middling discourse, memes, and like, you know, basically coal is rising to the top, whereas like actual genuine interesting stuff is like being suppressed.
So
I shared you the image, on Telegram.
Perfect. Are we just calling shit coal now to have a more racist way of saying cringe?
Is it racist? Well, yeah, it did come from there. Yeah.
I'm just assuming that was the case, because I don't know why people started saying that, because I associate that with something else that's also, you know, racially inclined.
I think it may have it has racial connotations, but it's more of like the coal is like just basically what heats up the gemmies, right? Like they're the ones that like
I just saw the image. I'm not putting that up on here, but
no. Yeah, it's got a kid in it. That's why I
wouldn't want to. I'm not rehashing your old drama.
Yeah. There was another one that I shared for the Marine edit of the Kathy Girl Summit, which I shared that.
With the firing squad.
A class of young frogs sits around the campfire ready to hear lore master Geo's stories about the Catboy Geo, a 2029 war fought between Tradcats and other Tradcats. Gather around, kids, to tell you about E-Girl War #1 to E-Girl War #3. Like, the E-Girl War was hilarious, though. I gotta give AF that. That was a pretty good one. It was good. But again, we keep like recycling the same stuff. The E-Girl War, you know, it's coming back.
And again, but these feedback loops. This is the thing that irks me though about Twitter is that you remember 6 months ago, where like there was a lot of people saying that like, oh, right, Twitter's got nothing to talk about. The discourse isn't
like
going
6
anywhere.
years ago, yeah.
And it was like it's dead. And it's like, well, people said this like 6 months ago earlier, 6 years ago. And everyone was commenting, well, no, there's a new crop of posters. Things are going in a different direction.
Yeah, ZHP had that tweet where he's like, like people that don't know, like that have been around that aren't old hats, they don't know the cycle. Where it's like people say the scene is dead. I'm going to do something new. They create something new. E-wars happen. Scene is dead. Create something new. Another group. Like
that's the ultimate feedback loop.
Samsara, really.
It's the ultimate feedback loop. It's a cycle. It comes back around. Oh, you know, E-Right is dead. We're going to create something new. But it turns out it's not new. It's some guy's ideas from like 6 months ago or 6 years ago or whatever. And then, like you said, people fight and they do it, right? You know, like a normal week as Ace says, is called a content drought, right? You know, like some weeks you're going to be like Geo and I, where we do like 3 or 4 different streams or 5 streams and like a week. And then sometimes you're just going to do your weekly show. That's life. It's like a job, you know. Some weeks are going to be busier than others.
The big project around the water cooler.
You know, millennials coming up in December, guys. Whereas like sometimes it's just like, well, we're just going to do Digital Archipelago this week. Next week we'll have another video or whatever, right? You know, like sometimes that tends to be the case. And you know, it's the eternal cycle. Time is a flat circle of it's so over and we're so back.
Yeah.
And I mean that's what tends to be. If you're lucky, you can strike out by reply guying or dunking or ratioing someone, and you can use that as a platform to talk about other things. I did not expect to write a Substack yesterday, but Morgoth had said a lot of things that I agreed with. I was like, oh shit, I got to write something, because I originally planned to, I still do have a Substack scheduled for this Friday, but it's just like, oh, sometimes you see something and get that stroke of luck or engagement, and like the same sort of thing happened with like Charles Haywood, right? He's just like, well, I really think that, and it all started because he reviewed George Hawley's Right-Wing Critics of American Conservatism, which is like a 2015 book. And it's not a bad read. I bought it off his recommendation because this is like before Trump. And he got everyone from like Joseph Sobran to the John Birch Society about how like conservatism, kind of like that Zablat guy, talking about how like conservatism always kicks out its fringe movements. And it's he was like, well, why don't we just do what the left does, where basically there are no enemies to the left, and there are, the whole Vosh thing about like acceptable targets or whatever. He's like, well, why? Like, clearly we're in an existential conflict. Like, why don't we do that? And he was sort of replying to Rod Dreher. He's like, well, no enemies to the right. And he's just like, and I get it. Rod Dreher has turned into the lol cow that he is, a primitive root wiener and soy jacket.
He really deserves it.
And just, he does deserve it, especially after this whole doxing bit.
When you dox someone, that's over, bro. Like that's omerta right there. Yeah.
That's how it goes. I mean, and of course, but people forget that, he used to be like the Fed posty religious conservative back in the Obama years. That's where he got his fame, where he would really call out like, troons as demons way before anyone else did.
Have you ever seen that C-SPAN clip of Helen Andrews freaking out on her boyfriend, her ex, like freaking out on her?
No.
Oh, it's hilarious. You gotta like, Future Moldovan Citizen was talking about it, where like Helen Andrews, just like her power level is unreal. Like she got like into it with the whole like skipping the pay meters. And like
her tweet about the fare jumpers.
Fair jumper. Well, I mean, everybody does that, but like, it's like,
well, it's certainly found in some decivvilized subpopulations, but yeah.
Well, subpopulation.
It's a line from Rod Dreher, but go on.
Yeah, no, but like, she had this clip where her ex-boyfriend, who's like some kind of like normicon hack, is like talking about how she's like a vicious, and she's kind of like that Ayn Rand like character. And it was hilarious. It was live on C-SPAN, and they were just like beefing. It was the most like cringe, like it was hilarious. You gotta watch it. It's hilarious. But like imagine getting owned on C-SPAN by your ex-girlfriend. Fair jumper American. I've heard like basketball Americans. I've heard because of the
basketball, magic, decivil. Yeah, there's so many names that no wonder why certain SPLC like groups can't keep up with the lore.
I heard after my stream with Jay Burden, Dodge Charger Americans. And I'm like,
that's the perfect example of like the military,
I can't believe it. I love Dodge Chargers. I can't believe they're known now. I thought like
they're known for Boots getting like 24% interest rates because they joined the military and they got to get out of the barracks. It's like, come on, baby. I know you 250, but I got TRICARE and I want out of the barracks. It's just a sad state of a lot of enlisted men that I know who got married to mid or ugly chicks.
Military wives, bro. Military wives. Listen to
not all of them are that way. Not all of them are that way.
I hope not. Like I just the military wife. My God, top Tampa Bay Burger King employees. Like the anime Burger Girl. That was another discourse point this week too. You see that where she got the Burger King hat?
No,
like the one guy on the flight. He's like trying to find politics into this, and some like irony left is like, this is clearly a racial subtext. Like, you saw that, right?
Yeah, I did. But it's just, I'm glad that the Burger King hat has been turned into a hate symbol at this point. Let it be. But I mean, like, Twitter can sometimes generate content and can generate discussion. I mean, Lord knows that we've done it more times than hell. We've done it every episode. Archipelago.
Every episode
our first episode was about meme magic and Twitter, for God's sake.
Yeah.
I mean, but yeah, I mean, it's and I mean, that's where he's sort of discussing now was this, can we have no enemies to the right? And he was sort of positing this in one of his later reviews. He's just like, well, and he was like, does the politics of how different are the politics of George Lincoln Rockwell and Rand Paul? I bet you they have a lot in common. And I was just like, yeah, they probably do. But the problem is that like the hauntology of liberal democracy is a man from the 1940s, and you'll never, ever recover from that. Even though, yes, they probably do have a lot in common in regard to that. I already have humble Austrian landscape painter on my bingo. Well, yeah, we're definitely there. But he was just like, I don't think he said Rockwell, but he did say the American, Nazi party from like the 1960s that he had led. And he's like, I probably have a lot in common.
Man.
And I was thinking to myself, ooh, like
wait, who said this?
This was Haywood.
Yeah.
And I mean, this was the no enemies to the right thing that he's talking about. He's just like, yeah, like obviously there's going to be some dissatisfied elements, but he's just like, the crisis of American politics that we're facing is existential.
Yeah.
And he's just like, so it's either like total atomizing death into like the current, regime. And I don't know how fully fleshed out these things are. And one day we plan to have him on to interview him.
Yeah.
I put a mental note and I wrote it down on my planner to go email him after the show. And so we can find him, but and maybe get some time for it. But yeah, I mean, I find it interesting because he also had it out with DC Miller on this discussion. So let me go get started with where Haywood had said, because he gets to flesh it out a lot more in this sort of discussion, which Miller, I don't think I don't know if he was fully prepared for it, but I guess like Harris is like this like face, Lord kind. I mean, he's been in politics for a long time in terms of like political activism. He had been on Tucker Carlson, I think like last September, he put out the full video because it says 9/22 from last year, 2022. And it was just interesting because he was talking about his other ideas here, but he says, winning, total permanent defeat of the left, the ideology of the heart of the Enlightenment's two core principles of total emancipation from all bonds, not continuously chosen, and total forced equality of all people, which you can't get. But the phrase no enemy to the right is merely an expression of the approach. Is the sound adoption of a universal left tactical principle first enunciated by Alexander Kerensky before the Bolshevik Revolution. It turned out to be an unwise principle for him personally, but it was entirely correct that the principle was crucial for left domination. And it's been a key component of left-wing success for 100 years. And what is the sauce? And what is the goose for is sauce with gander? I mean, this is my question, though, is that every time left-wing strategy tries to be adopted, it never works. And I mean, can you be a right-wing Fabian? There's some people that say yes, but I mean, how many right-wing think tanks or policy papers or white papers that have been written? And I kind of think about the National Policy Institute from a certain well-coiffed gentleman. I
was listening to clips from my one follower. He edits them like it was the one where he was like like he had the villain music in the background. It's like, it's time to embrace a little bit of evil again. It's like, wow, is it 2016 again? Like it was really crazy. It was a good clip. I don't know why he's like, when you clip the well-coiffed gentleman, he's just like, he's funny. He's like, I don't know why, he's just like,
he could have been an amazing comic.
Yeah, like he's got timing. He's got that personality. Like the best one, and even though like, I love Amy Therese, but my one friend on Twitter, he replied with that one clip where Richard was like, listen, first of all, you're a spinster. I don't want to say that. I want to go. Like, he immediately like pulled back. Like, this is how much of a bastard he is. Like, he pulled back. Like, he knew that he was like dropping an insult on a woman, but then he had to like pretend that he was pulling back. He's like, I don't want to say it. I don't want to go there, but like, you're a spinster. Like,
yeah, you're a spinster.
So
you're kind of
brilliant.
It's kind of over,
I think it's kind of over. Like, just the guy, he's brilliant. Like, the clips are, I don't know why. I shouldn't have such a favorable opinion of him in public, but like, it was just the way he like.
Can you separate the art from the artist?
You have to separate. Exactly. So it's like the way he pulled back when he said spinster, he knew he like unleashed a nuke on some woman, but he's like, he had to pretend that he was pulling back. He's like, he had
to act horrified that he just dropped fat man and little boy on this woman.
he dropped an attackums on this woman. Like it's like, listen, you're a spinster. I don't want to go there. Like, I don't want to say it, but you're a spinster. Like,
you're kind of a hag.
Kind of a hag. Like it's like, oh my god, bro. Like,
it takes a skill to be that pernicious of a bastard.
If I wasn't like fearful of things, I kind of would want to interview him one day, but probably not. Like it's just to like, how did he transform into what he is now? Like, how did that happen? Like, it's just, but he's too nuclear. He's too nuclear.
Someday someone will write a biography of him, and it will be rather balanced, and it will come from the person that we least expect. So, I mean, for instance, like there's this really nerdy, skinny academic that I'm trying to remember his name, but he's like definitely a liberal, and he's not, by any stretch of the imagination, our guy, but he wrote a biography of Willis Carto.
Whoa!
And I just thought to myself, whoa, right? That kind of killed me in a lot of ways, where it's just like, yeah, this dude wrote a book on him, and I'm trying to remember who it was. I think, it was Michael. It was George Mike. It was George Michael, not the one that you're thinking of.
No,
but he wrote Willis Carto and the American Far Right, and he had a whole little bit on C-SPAN talking about it, and he's like clearly trying to explain to the normie audience, like, listen, I don't want to go into what this kind of denialism means, but
it's like the Yak Move book recently.
Yeah. And I have a copy of this because Willis Carto is rather famous for being the man who published Francis Parker Yockey's Imperium.
Yep.
He instituted the American Free Press and was part of the beginning of the Institute for Historical Review, but like everyone kind of looks over him. And but anyways, the point being that, he wrote a rather decent, I mean, it's not going to be our guy kind of biography, but like
right.
a decent work. And it kind of gives you a pretty encapsulating thing because Carto let him stick around. And I'm like, eventually Spencer will probably have someone like that. But it kind of does beg the question, though, about, the phrase of no enemies to the right, because one of the things that has always sort of been this thought in the back of my mind, and I wrote this in the video, and it's also in the video. So for those of you who are on Substack and support me, you guys see the essays behind the paywall early before I decided to record them. But this one was good. And it was the Ratchet's Paul. And, I had said that my idea of a win condition or a victory may be different from, Geo's version, or it might be different from, say, the Chargers, right? And so like that becomes the question. Is like, well, what's our?
I don't have an idea of winning, I guess, besides Based World. I don't know, like what would be winning, Prude, to you?
Well, I don't. That's the thing. Is that to me, what does a victory look like? I mean, Yarvin's idea of a victory is a victory that enables more victories, but even then, that doesn't indicate. Well, what does that look like to you?
I feel like it's different for me because, like, if you look at the condition of winning from Canadian perspective, like, I'm not a heritage Canadian, so like, I don't speak for them, but like, I feel like the condition of winning would have to be some form of like de-Americanization. I hate to say it. I mean, as much as like. I'm in a weird position because like most of my audience is American. Most people I talk to are American, but I feel like from the Canadian perspective, like again, this is informed by George Grant, obviously. So it looks different, but I feel like in terms of like the right wing in general, like world chuds of the world unite, the condition of winning is obviously, I feel like in our hearts, we know what we mean by winning, but we just don't know like the exact picture of winning because that is obscured. But what were you going to say when I asked you, like you're going to...
Oh, well, I mean, no, that's the like 100% sort of bit there. But I mean, like George Grant's like essential Canadian thinking that I think that Americans should also read as well to get an idea of our friends up north. But and Settler's Lament did a good stream on him if you want to know more about George Grant, which I recommend. But I mean, on here, I think Haywood makes his case. And I know some people don't like him, or that he's like a DeSantis guy, or that he's the face lord. I mean, everyone's got their innate. I mean, Gio and I both show our faces, so I mean, I guess we're up in that category. To some extent.
What's funny? You mentioned about a Carlto, like it, like all the same stuff that we debate over has already happened, but like way before the internet. Like even like I'm even thinking of like Dr. Pierce. Like, how we talk about like optics war and Wignats and all that. Mm-hmm. Like William Luther Pierce like literally had lectures about we're gonna get these yahoos out that are skinheads and sell drugs and look bad and cause problems. The yahoos, or I think he called them yahoos, or he called them like unsavory types. Like it's like literally he was talking about the
get rid of these unsavory individuals. But
yeah, like, he literally was talking about the optics war back in the 80s. So nothing new under the sun, literally.
No, and I mean that's the thing is this. Isn't that a highlight of how bad the culture has gotten? That we've become so deracinated from any sort of. I mean, I get it. These were far right. It was easier, right? To hide and bury these guys from public light. Although, if you go back to like 30 years ago in the 1990s, like you can find everyone from like Jared Taylor to E. Michael Jones on C-SPAN, which is ridiculous to think about. C-SPAN was wild 30 years ago. That was the place to be. That was the public forum. That was where Twitter would fight. You know, if we were around 30 years ago, you and I would be
on there.
On C-SPAN
against Archipelago would be on C-SPAN.
It'd be king shit. But
Athenian Stranger would be on C-SPAN doing a
Crossfire ain't got nothing on what C-SPAN used to be 30 years ago. Oh my god. But
I hope those were recorded back. Like hope someone dumps them on the internet one day.
You can find quite a few of them. And it's the same reason why, like, if you go back to like a 1980s like computer talk show, Jared Taylor's on there, and he's like speaking against Microsoft Excel about some other program, and the comment section is in two ways. One part of the comment section is like, "Oh my god, this guy was so wrong about Microsoft Excel," and the other guys are like, "That's my boy, Uncle
Jared Taylor." Yeah.
But because those things were so easy to bury back then, everyone on the internet has turned into a political paleontologist. Where everyone's shoveling and digging and getting the brush around these ancient ideas. They were relearning the classics, and we're even learning about some of these other guys from the 20th century who may have not been right, who may have been, who knows. But and
we've all taken up the role of anthropology.
We're all political paleontologists and anthropologists in a lot of ways. But I guess the win condition here aspect, I mean, Haywood gets into, and he says, in his quite good, if very incomplete book, Live Not by Lies, Dreyer gushes endlessly over dissidents in Eastern Europe who were left, even anti-Christian, but worked with Christians to oppose communism. You can be sure that any individuals too far right under communism, Dreyer would note approvingly if they were excluded from joint action to overthrow communism. After all, better read than unacceptably right. And this kind of goes back into sort of Yuri Friedman and that Zablat guy talking about how conservatives gatekeep their fringes. But I mean,
did Friedman talk? I mean, did Dreyer talk about the Nouveau Droit or like the European New Right? Or
I have not read Live Not by Lies. I have read the Benedict option.
Yeah.
And the only good part about the Benedict option, the only little nugget of a red pill in that book, is the very real fact that if you are a sincere, devout, church-going, more than just Christmas and Easter kind of Christian, you are a minority and you need to act like it, because you don't have the power of the moral majority of the 1990s, and you sure as hell don't have the power Jerry Falwell did back in the 60s and 70s.
Oh yeah.
That age is gone.
The crew, or Billy Graham with the Crusade tours.
Yeah, like that's gone. And I mean, there are some people that still act like it is. Like, not to dox my geography or anything, but like, I've driven around all parts of the rural parts of Texas in sort of like all the way from like the Panhandle over towards, Texarkana. And what I notice a lot are these like traveling pastors that will do like tent sort of style revivalism.
They still do that?
Yeah, they do.
The tent revivals?
They're very politically charged.
Yeah.
Things like where all lives matter and things that's very sort of boomer conservative evangelical.
Blue lives matter.
But they'll do things like where all lives matters, like get to know the real Jesus Christ. And it's like a very politically charged, and it's a guy with like sort of a buzz cut hairstyle and a suit doing his, his evangelism. And it's just like, it feels like a foregone age or a bygone era. But it's indicative of the fact that, like, listen, if you're doing this out in the sticks, out in the boonies, and you're not doing it in the cities or whatever, that like clearly, right, like you've been driven out. And then in a lot of ways, that's the one nugget of the Benedict option is that you are.
Well, that's the story of evangelism in America is being driven out of the cities, and like.
But it used to not be that way. Like the first and second Great Awakenings were in the cities. Nowadays, it's completely opposite. But I think that has more to do with demography than anything else. But there's we have an issue, I think, and he talks about Buckley or even Roger Scrutinism. where
Beautiful Losers.
Yeah, very much this, Beautiful Losers type mindset where we are now led down an alleyway with a dead end, and this is where we're at. And he's saying, well, we really shouldn't have, let all those other guys get shot or kicked out of polite society to do so. And I guess that sort of becomes the fundamental debate for this day and age. Is like, well, what are we to do with that, or what does that look like? I mean, for a lot of us, I think that we're the good thing is that, well, I think it doesn't matter if someone calls me a racist. Hell, we did a whole bit on Xenosystems where like Nick Land says discrimination is the basis of all civilization, and he's right.
Yeah.
And it's not just discrimination like in the traditional ethnic sense, but like discrimination against certain ideas, certain practices, certain agricultural techniques. That word has a much broader context besides race and racism. But that's the way in which we all view it.
You know what's funny is that episode, it's the only one of our streams to get demonetized, but it had an actual review that someone on YouTube reviewed and saw that it wasn't fit for monetization. So maybe because like of Nick Land, like you can't like, you know what I mean? Like I think maybe that's why. But we didn't say anything to Fed Posty in that stream. It was a philosophy stream. So
yeah, I mean, I don't think we said anything ridiculously.
No, I think it was just because of it's Nick Land. That's why. That's probably why. Like someone just saw Nick Land on the YouTube censor, and he's like, "Oh, can't have that." That's yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I had. Oh, have I? No, I have not done a stream dedicated to Nick Land. I know that Clossington did not too long ago.
Yeah.
But I wonder if he, had that issue.
But Gio, you were incorrect about Styx not being is he monetized?
Yeah, he has like monthly super chat streams or something like that.
Oh no, but like I mean like his videos being monetized. That's what I meant. Yeah, his videos are not monetized. Like I think YouTube explicitly like him and I forget what happened with Dankula. I think like he had to like fight to get remonetized or something. I forget how that worked out. But what's funny about Dreyer, like talking about the Nouveau Droit, like every time like I post something about Russia, I neglect like the fact that I have like European listeners. And so like apparently like while we're streaming, I posted that poll that Keith Woods, like, are you pro-Russian or pro-Ukrainian? And it's funny because like, every time I like post about Russia in my Telegram channel, it devolves into like a European race war in the chat section. So like, what are you guys doing? Like, so I gotta like after the stream, I'm gonna have to like go in there and be like, what are people saying? But if Arsenius is still in the chat, he probably will inform me on the European race war going on in my chat, telegram.com/January Productions to follow all of my more spicier posts. I posted something about how should I call them? Brahmin caste Americans today. What will I call it? What will be the alphabet soup Americans? There you go. That's another one. Alphabet soup Americans.
There you go.
Yeah.
But yeah,
you wanted to read more of the article?
I mean, he just poses an interesting question because it's just like, his idea is like total ideological destruction, which is like great.
But that's not going to happen.
No, I don't think so. I think that you're stating from, and this was my one criticism that really popped up because a few weeks ago on Twitter, he got into it with somebody, and I don't remember who he got into it. But he had made the traditional red state American foible, which was, well, there are way more firearms in the hands of red state Americans than anybody else. And he says, we'll clearly get to see the history of, internal population disputes potentially play out in my lifetime. And he's like in his 50s. Mm-hmm. And I was just thinking to myself, and because I've heard that before, we hear it all the time. Red staters have all the guns. They'll be the ones to do it. But I mean,
that's not true anymore.
Well, even if it's not true anymore, right? I mean, even if most of American firearms are in private collections or things like that.
No, what I mean is, our enemies are arming.
I mean, we talked about that.
Clubs,
We talked about that like 2 episodes ago. How like
what happened in Georgia?
Georgia, and the fact that even in Idaho, they managed to have armed guys show up to defend a drag story hour or something like that. Or most recently with that Brown Pride thing, and I think Iowa or whatever.
What's funny is that the one, this type of person had the AK with like the sight mount all the way up, and people were talking about like the Rhodesian Bush War. Like, Did you see that?
No, I did not.
Well, it's like with this, like, I can't say for YouTube, but like one of these alphabet soup Americans had like the site mount all the way up, and people were talking about like how in Rhodesia, Robert Mugabe's forces thought that if you like put the site mount all the way up in the AK, that it would make the gun work better, like a video game.
Oh my god.
You so like it was like a viral tweet too. It's hilarious. And it
Good
had like
Lord.
the pink flag on the cover and everything, and
Of course.
of course, yeah.
Of
but
course.
but you were saying about no, I think like the whole Civil War discourse, like Scott Greer is correct. Like it's stupid. Like it's, I mean, okay, it is true that in terms of like the vast majority of like grunts in the military that come from southern states, yeah, it's probably true that you would have the chuds would be overwhelmingly advantaged in terms of like being armed, but also in terms of training experience. But that's not necessarily the case, because I've even seen veterans protecting Drag Story Hour like events.
Yeah.
So it's like you can't like rely. First of all, you're not going to rely on the American military, because what's going to happen is the political machine in Washington, they would have the military on their side. It would only be like, I can't envision like an October Revolution scenario, but for the chuds, you know, like I think like that discourse is a losing end for the right wing. I think like slow, methodical march through institutions, strategic power, and finding states where the right wing in America could, like Florida, can basically create an apparatus where they would be in charge and they could publicly flout the orders of Washington. That's the best you could hope for, I feel like, in this environment. You're not going to hope for like some like a massive apocalyptic civil war 2.0 where the chuds are going to rise up and go again. It's not, that's a fantasy, you know. But is that what you're going to say, Prude? I mean, I could just be skeptical.
No, I
just
mean,
blackpilling, but you know.
The other thing too is that where's like, so sort of like the more, I mean, Haywood's no friend of Curtis Yarvin. He has a really damning post about him.
Oh yeah.
Like it kind of makes me chuckle, but like, you know, he sort of talks about it from sort of a historical point of view about how these things happen. But you know, where's the what do people want? I mean, there are some people that want to be itchy with a trigger finger, but there are others, like for instance Yarvin, who's got a lot of attention still. He is like, well, listen, like the revolution should be bloodless. Like, you know, like if you take power, those pod people are your pod people.
Yeah.
And how much of that is true, I'm not
true.
too sure.
No,
You know,
that's
like
discounting ideology.
You know, like I think people forget how powerful. I mean, he's like almost ignoring his own how Dawkins got pwned to think about meme plexes and mind viruses. But like,
oh yeah, that one, yeah.
And because like, what happened when Trump took office or when Brexit happened? Unless you root out and destroy and fire and, you know, defenestrate the civil service, they will do everything in their power to turn against you. We saw this with the Home Office with Brexit. We saw this even before Trump was inaugurated. You saw all those alternative Department of the Interior accounts or Department of Homeland Security Twitter accounts posted by some random lefty that probably didn't even work in the federal government. Some of them did. But it illustrates what you're kind of dealing with. And that's how powerful the ideological grip is. In the same time,
in the military.
Right? In the military too, but the military also has a demography issue, which poses an interesting question.
Yeah.
When,
the loyalty to America. Yeah.
Well, you know, or loyalty to Mexico or things like that. But the other thing that also comes to my mind is that, well, what do we see on Twitter 24/7 about like, if I were to say, can we all just get along? Our real enemy is this guy. What would happen? Well, I'd probably get ratioed.
Yeah.
Almost instantly.
You would get coal jacks.
Yeah, I'm posting coal, like, yeah, the left is the enemy, but like I really have to dig on this guy first. And so the left wing, you know, the left understands hierarchy. They really do. Believe it or not, they really do. Because there are people who are powerful.
They just think it's oppressive, but they understand it.
Well, but they also understand how to listen and follow orders. Like they know that some guy that's associated with this organization is going to text them or text their leader that there's going to be a trailer truck that's going to drop a pallet of bricks on this street, or they know that
really suspicious,
suspicious, or they know that they need to show up at this location at this hour with whatever firearms that they have to protest anti-drag queen story hour protesters. They implicitly know hierarchy, and they also implicitly know that it's state sanctioned. They know that it's state sanctioned, and they know that there's stochastic terrorism is state sanctioned when they vilify like white people.
Yeah,
they know that this is all state sponsored.
Yeah, if you go to anti Twitter, I mean, they call like that the Chuds has said in Telegram, their Telegram goes that they're going to protest the dragger, calling for whoever to come and aid us to defend this noble drag story hour. Also, Bartholomew the Red said, Gio, I get the impression that a lot of veterans are hicklibs. Yeah, I mean, if you've seen Mill Twitter,
there's so many hicklibs.
Oh man, it's brutal. It's especially like the whole Ukraine thing right now. It's like they're, it's bad. It's, so don't rely, like, again, the sort of like BoomerCon obsession with the military. I feel like that's going to be a huge, and it's, I understand, like, it's hard for Americans to hear that, but it's like, I'm not bashing the military. I'm just saying that you have to realize it's a bureaucracy like anything else nowadays. Like, come on, like I don't feel that there would be sufficient pushback at the higher level of the military if something were to happen. I feel like you're gonna have to find a way to get the military back on the side of like, red-blooded Americans. But that's,
Well, and I think that this would require, I mean, can I see a sort of, I don't know, maybe like an alliance of sorts? Like, I consider myself a pretty diplomatic individual. Like, there are some hardcore traditionalist people that I associate with. There are some, I'm relatively on friendly terms with a lot of guys in BAP sphere.
Yeah.
Or the guys that follow Schwab and his like esoteric sort of schizophrenic posts, which are really good. They're good stuff. I'm not going to, I don't have anything bad to say about these people because they've never said anything bad about me. And for some reason they like listening to me, which is even crazier. I know Martin has said very high things about me, which I don't understand. Like, I don't feel like I'm saying anything new under the sun here, but it's indicative of the fact that not everyone has, and I think I'm agreeable to a fault. Like, I don't think I'm disagreeable enough, which is a personal fault of mine that I need to address. But like, not everyone's a diplomat. And this environment that we're in goes back to the Twitter feedback loop problem. This is why I wanted to bring these two things together, is because one of the things that I've noticed, and these thoughts aren't entirely complete because you're on a live stream, no thought is complete. This is why I like writing, and I miss video. This is why the video essay should not die. But it's that the problem I see with the Twitter feedback loop is that everyone's out to get one another, or everyone wants to be seen, or everyone wants to be noticed. And so what happens? Everyone pulls out a knife and everyone gets ready to stab one another. Ugh. Or better yet, they do their own little op thing. I think it was rather damning, and I know that some people would have a disagreement on this, but I think that the whole Carlsbad long knife employer art,
I was just getting ready for you to say it, like,
was a pretty damning indictment
that was
of kind of like the Twitter ecosystem. Because
that was a work of art, I gotta say, man. That was Carlsbad freeing himself.
Zero HP was right. He actually got to have fun on Twitter for once. But like, what did he do it for? He was like, well, to highlight like this is kind of the ecosystem and that this is kind of bad. And to some extent, I do agree with him. This is that, when you're in an environment where you're constantly
the way he did it was totally like out there, but he did have a fundamental point. It worked. Yeah, but if you have enough people that are like respected in a scene and you could basically gamify their talking points, then you could, like, you know what I mean? Like you could.
Yeah, and it worked very successfully.
I agree with Ludwig, by the way. We need more Colonel McGregor's. He's got great streams, Colonel McGregor.
Yeah.
I don't know how they let him do it, but he's I think he's not, like, he's still a colonel, like you're a colonel for life, but I think he's retired. I think that's how he's
retired. You have no freedom of speech when you're in the military, and if you have a certain like security clearance, then you really don't have any quote unquote freedom of speech. But it's funny because like both Colonel McGregor and John J. Mearsheimer have YouTube accounts.
Yeah.
And their community posting is the most pure BoomerCon shit I have ever seen. And it's almost tasteful because here's the thing. Like, everyone's like, oh, Mearsheimer's this like, Russia shill. And like, he's like a foreign operative. I'm like, this guy voted for Bernie Sanders in the 2020 and 2016 primaries. And he cited what was it? He said that the greatest national security threat that America faces is not from the outside, but from within due to income inequality. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like these guys aren't like, they're not our guys.
But apparently Bernie's a Kremlin shill, according to certain leftoids.
Because he doesn't want to escalate this into a nuclear war. Heaven fucking forbid.
Yeah, I know. Like that's apparently he's the whole like Glenn Greenwald's a Russia shill. He's
I mean, he's a lefty that wants like Brazil.
I'm sure
he's got his own problems.
I'm sure Glenn Greenwald like is just thrilled with the legislation about not having gay propaganda in Russia. I'm sure he loves that.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he loves that. I'm sure that he loves the fact that even the most progressive leftoids will just be like, haha, how are you and your rent boy husband? And it's just like,
wow, that's really
I'm like, wow, like so much for the tolerant left, I'm sure is something that Greenwald has said to
Dave Rubin points so much for the tolerant left. I can't have my adopted gay kids.
I can't traffic my children,
Oh man.
It's guys, trafficking people is really easy if you just call yourself and have a husband. It's that easy.
Do you want to read Daniel Miller's response?
Yeah, I can bring up a little bit before we get into super chats because
like DC, I feel like when I was reading this piece, I feel like
he had very good points. I don't think I don't think he deserved the castigation he got.
Like I mean, I feel like though, like I've tried to get him on the show for a long time. Like I feel like the problem like with DC is that he's not plugged into like
the internet,
the Twitter sphere. Like it's hard to get a hold of him. So like it's sort of like he doesn't want to like produce content the same way that like he used to. Because I feel like, he got burned by a certain person I won't mention.
Yeah.
A certain let's call him Nepo child, Nepo baby that so he was in this lawsuit, suit, and it's just like I feel like he doesn't want to like participate in the discourse in the same way, which is fine though. Like I understand like he's got better things to do, but I feel like his analysis here suffers from not being, unfortunately, like not suffers, but like unfortunately, like, it's kind of like he's not plugged in
the internet. Because everyone wants to support the dunking, right? Again, the feedback loop. But he says the phrase "no enemies to the right" lacks ethical principles and also substantive political content. It refers to a theoretical political front in a zero-sum game. From this perspective, the question of who is actually more or less right is very hard to define. Despite generally being identified with the far right, for example, Italian fascism and German National Socialism both clearly incorporated leftist elements. I mean, that depends on your political frame, but so on and so forth. It seems to me that this slogan is not really workable as a political principle. Obviously, not everyone who identifies with the right is a friend automatically. Dreyer, for instance, identifies himself with the right, but the thrust of your argument is that he is an unreliable ally at best. Clearly, there needs to be some criterion for distinguishing true and false friends beyond the simple point of self-affirmation of the identity right. That said, I agree with the important political point here concerning the rhetorical use of the idea right from left. The term far right in particular is a polemical concept. And it's very funny. We mentioned Carlsbad, and I think Donald Trump Gaming, before we even went live, said every time I see the word polemic, I think of Carlsbad. But it's a polemical concept, but it's also an edit concept. I'm not aware of anyone who defines their own position in these terms. That's true. I don't call myself a far rightist. Used to delegitimize opposition according to the principle of guilt by association. This is very true. The historical analogy is the notorious sausage strategy pursued by Rákosi in Hungary. By portraying his opponents as fascist or fascist sympathizers, he was able to get the opposition to slice off its own right wing, then its center, then most of its left wing, so that its sympathizers willing to collaborate with the Communist Party remained. This kind of blackmail must clearly be resisted. We also face a different and I think more complex situation. Rákosi was systematically marginalizing political parties arranged across an ideological spectrum. We are dealing with a much more anarchic process in which individuals and organizations are stigmatized for various ideological and non-ideological reasons. The legions of canceled obviously don't constitute a coalition. And
he's right about that.
That's absolutely true, because it's not like...
That's what I was saying before, yeah.
Does Richard Spencer and, say, some other like normie kind of canceled person, do they have a lot in common? Probably not. Just like JF Garepe, and I know he's back on Twitter, which is cool. But like, do you think he's got a lot in common
He
with,
blocked
say,
me though.
Michael Jones? You know,
Oh no,
like,
no, nothing.
no, not at
Like,
all, not at all.
yeah.
And so there's no coalition building and there's no infrastructure. And it goes back to the point that you and Woes were talking about. It's just like, this is a very semi-permeable space. It's almost impossible to gatekeep. Interests can easily be feds. And Lord knows that they've got maps on everything, like from the German hate speech map from last year to 2017's Data and Society YouTube network thing.
They're still obsessing over people that went to Seville. Like, they're still like they
get so excited to dox somebody who went there.
No, but that's what I mean. Like, I proposed this question in a DM group we're in, where it's like, okay, can't the right like weaponize our own autism to have like a counter, like you know what I mean? Like, there's been a lot of like failed doxes, like certain people in Telegram have committed against their enemies that don't go anywhere because like these people, like they're literally obsessed. Like they literally have doxed people that went to that certain rally by the shoes that they wear, that they categorize in these GitHub lists, like their clothes, their face masks, their you know what I mean? Like it's incredible. Like if you like the amount of like time and resources people like they generally do believe that they're fighting like what did Vouch say? Like, we have 2 years till full fascism takes over in America and they're gonna lamppost us all. Like they believe this. Like that's and they have a lot of let's face it, they have a lot of like government resources and NGOs that back them. We don't have nearly as much resources. But I'm saying like we have a lot of like weirdos and schizos and people that are secret programmers that work for Silicon Valley companies that are anons. Like why can't we have like this stuff? But we don't because everyone wants to be, I hate to say it, everyone wants to be an e-celeb. Everyone wants to be a voice. And like, listen, like I hate to tell you this, but you can't put the marks, you can't take the marks from the stands and put them in the ring. Everyone's got to have their role. It's just, I don't know where I'm going with this. Maybe it's just resentment me because I'm like, I want to destroy my competition or whatever. The very few meager resources we're fighting over.
Well, and I said that too. I would love to have some of these like meager resources of institutional clout. I would love to see some of these like Claremont writers be like kicked to the curb so we can take their spot. But at the same time, right, that's another part of the Twitter feedback loop. Everyone wants to be the guy with the ratio. Everyone wants to be the guy who dunks on the lolcow. Everyone wants to be the next, calm poster or whatever. Like everyone, like that's the thing. It's just that because the internet in itself, and this goes back to like that really troubling, like, more people these days want to be like influencers or streamers or whatever. Yeah. It's just like even politics has that. Everyone wants to be the guy with their own streaming platform. Someone wants to be the next Bab. Someone wants to be the next Nick Fuentes. I guarantee it. There's someone starting their Twitter account or YouTube channel right now that's like, I'm going to be like the next X, or I'm going to be the guy that shits on, woke advertising. And in fact, I found this great channel and I sent it to you on Telegram. I'm going to recommend him on air because I thought it was pretty good. He's called Mr. Marketing Guy. And he did a really fun video breakdown on this like cringe Silicon Valley mud water product startup thing. And he looks like Trevor Moore. And he does it in this like suspenders 80s style yuppie like costume, and he's just shitting on these people. And he's talking about how these guys are like breaking like advertising laws and things like that. And I'm like, audio issues aside, this guy's pretty funny, and what he's covering is like rather niche because it's about advertising. Yeah. And I just DM'd him offhand, and I was like, yeah, Mr. Marketing Guy is his name, and I was like, this is pretty good, not bad. And He's like, yeah, hopefully. He's like, well, I drink and write on my balcony, so hopefully I might meet Trevor Moore one day. And I was like, whoa. Man. But to me, it does illustrate the fact that we can instantaneously find people wanting to get into the feedback loop of, we're back, it's over, I'm going to be the next e-celeb or whatnot. And it does, I think, and this goes back to the question I posed on that Substack, was just like, yes, things can happen on Twitter and things can happen online and Substack and where people write things, but it's also a really great way to discursively contain people. And that's sort of my like chief concern is that like, like these things would be cool to enact. These are all neat theorized theory cell topics and ideas. But on the other hand, well, we're all going to be here. We're all going to be knife fighting. We're all going to be enjoying long knives in each other's backs.
Yeah, long knives in each other's back. Mog the Chungus. Like, that was to spoof on Enoch on Twitter. No, but yeah, that's true. Sorry, I'm just getting distracted with this race war in my chat. It's just like, I'm like, why are you guys fighting? Like, people were complaining that I reposted this certain Alphabet Soup person, and I was talking about how, again, another point I stole from Nightmare Vision, where it's like, if you're like a low status male, you can perform in a certain way in terms of gender to secure a mid leftoid GF. So but no, it is I think that, like, the spectacle of it, like, we are creatures of the spectacle. I think this is what drives home of, like, the problems with the e-right in general, but not just the e-right, but I think, like, a lot of internet communities, the problem is that, when you do have a cadre of, like, content creators and influencers, or whatever you want to call it, I feel like the reason that, like, quote unquote real world action doesn't get done is because you have a thing that overtly relies on the spectacle nature of it. That there is sort of like, there is a nature to online posting that is a curse and a blessing, in the sense of, it's not very easy to interact with, like, material conditions around, like, a movement or a political ideology, but at the same time, like, the fuel that drives us is the thing that also prevents us from being a cohesive whole, which is really, like, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's a paradox. The fuel that keeps posting going is the same thing that leads to us dissolving and reconglomerating, and not really focusing on those nitty gritty things when it comes to political action, when it comes to, like, the way that, staffers are in some ways more important than politicians. You know what I mean? Like, to do those, like, real world things. And the more that we preach about it, the more that it just fuels, like, another meme war, the more that it keeps going on, the discourse loop keeps going on forever. And, like, I realize that I'm saying this knowing full well that my role is not to be, like, an activist, or a political organizer or whatever. Like, that's not my thing. That's not what I do. Like, I'm an artist. I'm like a word cell. Like, that's, like, I'm not trying to create a movement or anything. I'm not trying to be like the next whoever. Like, I'm me. I can't be the next whoever. But the hot take mill is a curse and a blessing, in the sense that to give it strength is to pull resources away from other things. And I feel like the right wing has to, like, have people that actually do have real world experience, that do know what they're doing, that do, like, know what political organizing is about, and that can, like, create mutual trust resources for people who've been canceled and doxxed and so forth. And it's just like, that needs to be worked on. So even, like, even, like, that becomes discouraging. Even that becomes like the Scott Greer, like, ruralites versus urbanites. It's like, no, it's like, if you have, like, working class people that are largely right wing, why can't you create these societies of fellow travelers, where, if you are doxxed, maybe you do have to, like, you can find a job with people that won't cancel you. And it's like, why can't you create mutual trust societies? Why can't you create I don't know, pension programs for e-celebs? There you go. That could be an idea. That's like, musicians have pension programs because they don't work a traditional job. It could be like that.
Yeah.
Like, pension programs for e-celebs.
Well, that's a potential avenue, but I think that we'll have to come back to this discussion for sure. Because I've
Should
got
I read
another
the internet friend content or comment? Or
yeah, sure, go for it.
So I sent you the link of the default video.
Yes.
So if you scroll down, it'll be there.
Let me go find the comment.
Yeah, listen. I'm not the guy to find you a job. Okay, I don't have.
Did you say, is this because? Oh no, it's not Donald Trump.
Like, working? You kidding me? Like, being a wagey? Come on, I spit on you. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Which one was the?
It was the internet friend one. If you go to, it's the one I liked, where he said, like, but it's a long one. I replied to it. Yeah.
The thank you for the shout out.
No. It's in the video. I replied to the internet friend one in the default video.
Oh.
I sent you in the private chat. I sent you the link.
Okay, let me get to that. Yeah. But yeah, I've got an hour to go before the.
Yeah, we won't need an hour. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Well, I still have to go through super chats, and then I also.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Have to walk the dog and stuff like that. So no, this is why I was like, okay, private chat.
Walk the dinosaur.
Yeah, I do.
Everyone get on the floor. Walk the dinosaur. Remember though? That's ancient 4chan post right there. That's ancient 4chan Cole. There was this beautiful green text once about a relationship that at the end it was like, go on the floor, walk the dinosaur. I'm like, oh man, you had me. Yeah. Did you find it?
Yeah, I did.
Is it YouTube friendly?
I'm listening.
No. I'm gonna read the reply.
Oh, well, I don't see. Okay, there are like 2 comments here that I see from internet friend. One was the shout. Oh, you're long. Oh, okay. Here it is.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. So the last half hour of this is really solid content, even if I don't agree with all of it. Taking something you two discussed and going off on a huge tangent, I think being anonymous is the most natural state of being online I've ever experienced, and nothing about it that was a lie. If anything, anonymity paired so well because I'm an overly honest person who can take people at face value. As examples and extremists, it used to be the case if someone wanted to go online and claim that they were actually a millionaire or a celebrity, but I can't say who or whatever else. Yeah, in retrospect, I guess you could say the general inclination was to respect the way they wish to self-identify because it was such a mundane and silly thing to lie about with no apparent upside. So, of course, the inclination was to believe them. At the same time, things like an anime PFP and knowing were a knowing, winky thing. A literal visual avatar to represent yourself in earnest was a bit too on the nose, so of course it was subverted. Yeah, dude, I'm some anime character IRL. It was a joke that was funny in the 2000s, still funny in the 2010s, but no longer funny in the 2020s. Accusations of people being grifters, lying for clout, and things like this becoming commonplace all came after the snake told Eve to bite the fruit of knowledge. One day, an anonymous original content creation generator was told that they could actually post original content on platforms other than 4chan or another platform to get a cut of the revenue, and that the entire algorithm changed. Being a face slur or a name slur is a state of sin, a fall from grace that represents anons being cast out of the Garden of Eden because stupid decisions made sometime in the early 2010s. I basically logged off the internet for about 2 years, from 2012 to 2014-ish, and when I came back, the online discourse changed completely. Mea culpa for not being around to gatekeep when gatekeeping was probably the most crucial and important thing, but I literally had no idea what was happening. Almost a decade of trying to put monsters back in Pandora's box after the fact and recognizing many efforts were just making it worse. I don't know, man. This is another tangent on top of a tangent, which is bad for engagement, so I'm sorry if I've lost your attention. What I find strange is now arguing with frog posters in 2020's internet, and here, frog posters should be understood as synonymous with, name slurs. They were born in original sin described above, but unlike their forebears who fell into the state of grace, these are typically people who have logged on and come of age well after an entire period of time problems became irresolvable, whether it was 2014 or 2012 or 2009 or hell, 1994 is tangential. The critique of old 4chan aesthetics of the anime PFP, the sardonic internet content for the sake of sardonic internet content, and suggests that there is some ulterior motive or dishonest absurdity in these elements. And yet, it is the frog posters who have fallen for the grifters on Twitter, the endless political arguments that brought many board cultures and online discourses to an unenjoyable stalemate, and so on, and continued this biblical allegory and try and get to the point I'm making. In the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve walked around in the nude, and this was perfectly natural, for they did not know what hunger was, for they simply lived and enjoyed life. After falling into disgrace, Adam and Eve had to clothe themselves lest they be called indecent and be cursed upon with hunger and have to work lest they starved. There would be no point in protesting that things used to be a certain way, and try to walk about in the nude again or go a day without earning a meal would be futile. And so it is with anime PFPs creating VIP quality posts on the internet. Using an anime PFP is meant as an indicator of my cultural heritage, anonymous, but it is continuously misunderstood, and I am accused with heinous indecency, and I am forced to try and make content, not for the sake of it being free, but it's something that will appease the algorithm because every minute we must hustle. Anonymous wasn't lying. Anonymous was the state of being without sin.
Whoa! That was incredible. Incredible, internet friend. You must come on Content Minded. I talked about this before with you. But my God, that was not great. Maybe I'm just making too much of it.
No,
I'm
it's.
just gassing up my friend. I don't know.
Maybe I regret being anonymous to some extent. I wish I had stayed in some respects, in some regards, but I feel pulled to some essence of humanity because I guess that's just my cope for it. Is that I see other people, and I've said it before, but when someone gets banned or when someone's gone, we treat them like they're dead and not that they were a human being underneath. I guess I don't like that. But in the same way, I was born in 1995, and my real political comings onto the internet came well after some of this board stuff had fell apart. And I rely on other people who are old heads to tell me what used to be and what came about. And so I live in this, like he had said, in this sort of post-fall world. And if that's the case, so be it. And I'm okay with where I'm at. I think it's kind of weird sometimes when memes and such get made with my face cropped on them, but so be it. Cody Browning's infamous for this. I have more Oswald Mosley style memes with my face on it than I'd like to admit, but neither here nor there. It's a very good point, and I hope that Internet Friend comes on to discuss it because I'd like to hear that in full detail.
Yeah, and for those who don't, Ursinius, that's from the comment section in the recent Content Minded episode 32, where me and Default discussed the works of Humdog. So, man, that was incredible. But the poster being in a state free of sin through anonymity and falling into the trappings of the worldly by. But then the thing is, though, Adam and Eve cannot go back to the garden. And so we're trapped in this condition. So you have to make the best of it. You have to, like, I think I'm trying to do that. I mean, maybe that's why people give me money, but it's like, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to like pretend that I'm something I'm not. I'm just like a word cell and an art bro. Like I'm not, man, like I read that and I'm like, man, that like the internet really does have a sort of quasi biblical narrative to it, the way it developed. And it's just like, I feel like trying to capture a moment of sincerity there. Like I mentioned, like the Crystal Cafe thing, right? Like trying to like be sincere and be vulnerable on the internet is a very tough task. But I feel like if you approach it with that level of honesty, well, even as an anon, there's something to it. There's a sort of flow to it. I wrote this screen on Telegram before I did the Incel podcast, where it's like how you deal with that like sociological gaze of like, okay, you're being on this something, you're like a subject in the wild, blah, blah, blah. But then when you have like this reality of the confessional, it's like, to be honest with it, is to sort of just state your case and let it go. It's almost a very Zen like sort of thing. You know what I mean? Where you're not hung up on like this, like which I hate to say, a lot of like these e-girls do this, where it's like this lurid display of confessional. You know what I mean? Like you try like that just is, it's too modeling. That's approaching lolcow territory. Like a lot of lolcows start off with like being too confessional, being like trying to make a spectacle out of their own like foibles, more or less. But I feel like if you navigate that with the sort of honesty and sincerity, but also like an ability to let it go and let it be, then it's like that I feel is the closest to sincerity you could get in the internet without it turning into a spectacle. Because when you do turn into a spectacle, then that becomes a form of insincerity. That becomes like, who's that weird TikTok woman? I know Default likes her, but she's like, it's like sexy to be ugly. Who's that girl?
I'm not on TikTok, and I refuse to get
She was like a celebrity. She's like this 32-year-old. Oh, all the e-girls love her. Guys, what's her name in the chat? This oh my god, she's like a TikTok celebrity. Oh god, what's her name? She's like, it's sexy to be ugly. I gotta look this up now. I'm really like, you know who I'm talking about, right? Like it's
I don't.
Sexy to be ugly.
Although Big Ben
TikTok.
says it's Dasha, but
Oh my god, what's her name? It's not
TikTok?
Dasha. She kind of looks like Dasha, but it's like,
what are you doing on TikTok, Gio?
No, Julia Fox. Julia Fox. Yeah, like all these people, like all these art hoes, they love this Julia Fox woman, and like Default loves this Julia Fox. Like she was a celebrity or something, but then she's like on TikTok now. I'm not on TikTok, please believe me. Julia Fox, like she,
Italian American actress and model. She was known for her debut performance in Uncut Gems.
Yeah.
Born February 2nd, 1990, age 32 years, soon to be 33.
Yeah, like she was the dominatrix. Like apparently, like you know what I mean. She's like does this like, I'm a hot, like it's very millennial. I'm a hot mess and I love it. You know what I mean? Like
sure.
Look, Arsidious. He's like a psychically connected to me, because every time like I state out, like I put out a reference to something, he knows right away. So he's like, yeah, Arsidious like, yeah, I was gonna say Julia Fox, but you know what I mean by the confessional. Like she's like she does this thing where it's like I'm ugly women are hot and I'm a hot mess, and it's like it's sexy and it's like exciting to be like a post-wall hot mess, and all these like TikTok art hoes, these Zoomer art hoes like love her on TikTok. It's like that's like a spectacle. I'm talking about something different. I'm talking like a more of like what Byung-Chul Han talks about with like idiotism. You know what I mean? In psychopolitics. But anyways, let's go to super chats. I'm just rattling off right now.
Yeah, I've got to wrap up soon because I have another.
I don't watch TikTok as much as default wants me to. I do not go on TikTok.
All right, so the first one comes from Mark Ave of Lake Mark for $5 Canadian. I wonder if this is the person who ran Diffle's account, because he says a quick donation to our foremost expert in geopolitics, but geo is spelled G-I-O. I wonder if that's Piffle or whoever that was on Twitter who made that tweet.
Oh, it's Piffy. Yeah, maybe it's Piffy. Yeah.
I'm gonna go through and do these on through Entropy. That way, I'm sorry that they won't be read up, but I do have to go a little quickly. But Post-Nut Clarity for $10 Canadian says, I have a very timely request. I love that name, by the way. Fantastic name. I have a very timely request for Geo. Can you please rank the NWO factions from cringe to based? So I'm assuming, that you're going to know a little more about this than I do.
Original NWO based, NWO Wolfpack based, NWO Silver not based, Latin NWO is kind of based. The Japanese NWO is really based. But yeah, it's kind of like near the end of WCW, like basically half the roster was in some form of NWO Wolfpack was cringe. I'll admit it was cringe. There you go. Yeah, half the roster was in the NWO near the end of WCW. So yeah.
All right. Jay Ford for $5 US says, well, no dice on my date this week. Haven't even matched with anyone else to try. My profile's pretty normy, but I wonder if I should lean into the vague into the vague in order to court other potential matches. Jay Ford, if you're going to turn into the Ben White of this channel, so be it. But for those of you who don't know, there's a guy named Ben White who donates every Tuesday to distribute his channel talking about his dating life. And it's a weird parasocial ritual, but for some reason I'm entertained by it because it's like, you go, Ben, you try it. But, Jay Ford, I'm sure there are other ways to maybe not be on an app to do it. But then again, everything's through apps these days. So Lord help you. Bartholomew the Red for $13.99 Canadian. He says, I agree with Gio on what a Canadian win is. Americans are our brothers and I love them, but if we want anything like the 1867 vision to survive, we need to reject both Americanism and this fake new Canada.
There you go.
I'm inclined to agree. I mean, Canada needs to divorce its cultural and political conflicts from the United States. That needs to happen sooner rather than later.
It's embarrassing, honestly, for Canadian libs, the worst.
Yeah.
You should do that interview with the wrestler who is that he will not divide us. That's incredible. Yeah. I can't believe he didn't get canceled from his WWE Performance Center contract because he will not divide us. So there you go.
Reprobris says new song on Sunday. Virch, I believe, will be the title. Literally me, magenta screen, visual, virtual. Segs neats, and he's all doing this in leet speak like it's 2006. But yeah, Reprobris is a musician who has his own YouTube channel. He did a single on White Boy Summer, which was pretty entertaining to listen to.
Nice.
So go ahead, give that a listen. And then Not Omegon for $3 US says the American government has very much replaced the military caste in America with mercenaries. There are very few soldiers who serve for any spiritual reasons, i.e. duty, patriotism, love of God and country. Yeah, that's very much true. The military that I was raised to believe in, from what my father served, is not the military of today. And there's a reason why the recruiting levels are so low, to a point where Council of Foreign Relations and Foreign Affairs magazine are talking about bringing back the draft.
Whoa.
So yeah,
who are they going to fight? I wonder.
Makes you wonder.
Yeah. Now there's certain armies getting depleted in Eastern Europe, but
funny how they keep
apparently they're calling for
people to be repatriated.
Yeah, they're refugees, like military age men, like the ones that came to Canada or Italy or Poland to go back into the country. So apparently Trudeau, here, drum roll please. Trudeau is sending not one, not two, but 4 what, they're not called Panther. What are they called? What are the tanks called?
Leopards? I don't know what the Canadians use.
4 Leopard tanks. A whole whopping 4 of them. I wonder what listen, 4 Leopard tanks from Canada is really going to determine the outcome in Bakhmut. So there you go.
Well, if you want to know more about that, I will literally be live in 40 minutes over on Semiagogs. We talk about Prometheanism, the 3 Cs initiative, and the Lublin Triangle. So we'll be very busy. Nice. Martin Sellner, myself, and Charlemagne will be on Semiagogs channel.
Man, you're with Martin Sellner, man.
I sure am.
Crazy.
Yeah, it'll be a very busy time. And then I guess we'll get right into the shilling. So Gio
tonight
and I both...
on the Man's Hour.
There you go.
With Furious Pertnexer, good Aussie. By the way, happy Australia Day. Don't let those pieces of you-know-what activists bring you down. Hail Australia. No, I'm not going to say it. Happy Australia Day to all my Aussie friends. I'm going to start rewatching all of Blue Healers again now. I also see Josh Neal in chat. Thank you, my friend. I see Nollis. Nollis had a great comment about me, why people listen to me and give me money. And a manual typewriter. I'm filled with my... I should buy a manual typewriter, just put in the background.
That way, every time that you shill, you should make the noise.
Yeah, cling. Yeah, but happy Australia Day. I'm gonna go on with Furious Pertnex. Well, actually, it's Red Hawk's channel, Man's Hour. We're talking about mid girls. So happy Australia Day to all my Aussie bros. It's still Australia Day, or is that yesterday? I
believe it was yesterday.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, it's confusing when it comes to the Australian time zone. They literally live in the future. So, yeah. So happy belated Australia Day to all my Aussie bros. Yeah. So tonight is going to be Man's Hour. Me and Prude are doing double duty, and tomorrow I have a few interviews and a bunch of different stuff. I believe next week I'm streaming with Yiz the Eunuch. So I have a bunch of stuff I have to do. I have a bunch of interviews. So the special content operation week is also happening behind the scenes too. So there you go.
Well, there you go. So also this week, both Gio and I were on Oren McIntyre's channel. Gio was on with Last Things last night. I was on Tuesday. Substack's got a new article on the subject of Twitter thinking and sort of not really replying, but just some stuff that Morgoth had said, and I wanted to expand on it. I'll have a new Substack out this tomorrow, and then I will be recording with Benjamin Boyce as well tomorrow. I don't know how long that's going to go, but it'll be a good time. And then a new video premieres on Wednesday the 1st. So things are going... Every time that it's not my week for Digital Archipelago, I'll usually have a video out on this channel to keep things going for scripted stuff. But by all means, all of Gio's links are in the description. His Patreon, where you can find all his other fun stuff, from PayPal to Buy Me a Coffee. Support the channel if you please, as well as Substack, because we also do things there. And by all means, subscribe, Buy Me a Coffee, and Substack are the ways to go. More things coming in the future. Starting in February, I will have everything of my channel transformed into audio and will be on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Nice.
So plenty of great stuff coming ahead in the future. And we'll see you all next week on Gio's channel.
Yeah. And I'm actually, next week, I'm recording with Lambda and Grayson Quay and Slav and COH. So it's good. And
I was just on with them too, all on Sunday.
Yeah. And so I'm also recording with another e-girl this Friday. So that'll be fun. Dino World. Have you know Dino World on Twitter?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, she's great. So there you go.
Most of my e-girl knowledge mainly comes from you, but yes.
Oh, man. So thank you all. God bless. Goodbye. Too sweet.
See you, gents.